Chapter 242. He couldn't help but be angry. The new Excellence Assembly, which was held once every 10 years, was actually quite meaningless. How interesting could a competition between Qi refining disciples be? The distribution of Foundation establishment pills could be distributed according to each sect's contribution. The reason why supporting Immortal Island never got tired of this was that it could reflect their status in the cultivation world. But now, the number one sect in the world, supporting Immortal Island, was robbed right under their noses. Thousands of people didn't even know about it. Moreover, more than 100 sects were involved. How could supporting Immortal Island face the world if word of this got out? The most infuriating thing was that this hero was too arrogant. Not only did he touch the Deluo sect and Nongquangsung, but now he even dared to touch supporting Immortal Island. This was intolerable. Investigate. Investigate thoroughly. I don't believe this hero can hide in the heavens. Feng Xiangtian roared. Oh Sihai and Dongfang Chang Ao looked at each other. The former handed over a jade archive and said, "Sect leader, you should take a look at this first." Chang Ao struck this down from the masked man. Feng Xiangtian's eyes were about to burst into flames. He angrily took the jade archive and examined it with his divine sense. In the blink of an eye, his expression softened. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the two of them. No one else has seen this before, right? His tone had already returned to normal. If there was something in this jade archive that could change Feng Xiangtian's attitude so quickly, it had to be Yu Qincho's doing. Actually, there wasn't much inside. He almost lost his life and caused such a huge commotion. He just wanted to leave the jade archive given to him by the Temptress of 100 Charms to supporting Immortal Island. The map on it indicated a location not far from the 100 Flowers Valley. Although the commotion was huge and the three of them were furious, they completely calmed down when the 100 Flowers Valley was involved. The Palace Lord of the 100 Flowers Palace was the daughter of the previous sect leader of supporting Immortal Island. Besides Zhou Sihai, the three of them were the direct disciples of the previous sect leader, Guan Dinghai. Zhou Sihai was also a member of the Guan clan. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had the chance to manage the cultivation pavilion. Feng Xiangtian's position as sect leader was supported by Guan Dinghai with the Guan clan's influence on supporting Immortal Island. Since this matter involved Guan Dinghai, the three of them did not dare to show their anger. In fact, the three of them had some suspicions. Could it be that the hero, who caused such a commotion in the cultivation world, was created by Guan Dinghai's daughter? If it was true, then the three of them wouldn't dare to make the decision. Even Feng Xiangtian wouldn't dare to make the decision. Feng Xiangtian clutched the jade archive in his hand and muttered to himself, "The two of you, follow me to Heavenly Wool Pavilion to meet Master." The three of them dashed out of the window. Feng TB Feng Feng TTU. From T say, I said, Feng T in. After reading through the jade archive, how could he not know what the three of them were thinking? They were afraid that this matter would implicate his daughter, so they came to ask for his advice on what to do next. Guan Dinghai pondered for a long time. Suddenly, he chuckled coldly. Looking at the sect leader's disciples, he said in a deep voice, "You don't have to worry about this matter. Investigate. Investigate thoroughly. If she really did it, quickly tell me. I will personally execute this evil woman and pretend that I never had this daughter." The three of them glanced at each other, and then Feng Xiangtian frowned and said, "Master, I know senior sister well. If this matter is really related to the Flower Palace, then I don't believe senior sister would make a move against our supporting Immortal Island, and senior sister wouldn't make a move against our supporting Immortal Island. I'm more worried that it has something to do with that Yen fellow." Guan Dinghai glared at him and said, "How many years has it been? You're still protecting her. Let me tell you, if this matter really has something to do with her, don't think about covering up for her. Quickly tell me." Feng Xiangtian showed an awkward expression. He bowed and said, "Don't worry, master. I know what I'm doing." Oh, Sihai and Dongfang Chang Ao held back their laughter. They hadn't seen Feng Xiangtian's expression for many years. To be exact, they hadn't seen it since he became the sect leader. The two of them were insiders. Back then, Guan Dinghai really treated Feng Xiangtian like his own son. He had already intended to marry his daughter to Feng Xiangtian, and Feng Xiangtian liked it. Who knew that Yan Bugui of 10,000 demons would appear and capture Bai Hua Fairy's heart? Because of this, Feng Xiangtian was sad for a long time. With Guan Dinghai's words, the three of them returned. Feng Xiangtian handed the task of investigating this matter to Dongfang Chang Ao. After Yu Qianzhou escaped back to Utopia, he didn't go anywhere else. Instead, he hid in Guan Yu's room. The bloodstains on his clothes and his pale face gave Guan Yu a fright. It was his first time seeing Yu Qianzhou injured to this extent. Yu Qianzhou was afraid that Bai Suzhen and the others would worry, so he told him to keep quiet and hide in Guan Yu's room to recuperate. Fortunately, he had the golden bead, so he didn't have to worry too much no matter how serious his injuries were. Half a day later, although his injuries weren't completely healed, they were mostly healed. When he could move freely again, he was about to leave. Guan Yu anxiously pulled him back, but in return, Feng Xiangtian warned him not to tell anyone about his injuries. He then quietly left. The next place he appeared was the place where he killed Lu Xingguang and the others. Now, whenever he arrived at a new place, he would use his blood essence to mark the next location so that it would be convenient for him to return again. After determining the direction, he quickly flew toward the location marked on the jade archive given to him by the temptress. He found a valley deep in the forest. After confirming that the entrance to the cave that was concealed by a formation was not far away, he didn't approach it. Instead, he quickly found a convenient place to observe and hid. He continued to recuperate as he observed. Naturally, there was a reason why he had risked his injuries to do something like this. First of all, the fake hero was very powerful. He probably wouldn't be able to defeat him if he fought him head-on. If he was really hiding here, he wouldn't do as the temptress had said and compete to see who was more powerful. Since there was such a powerful opponent around, he might as well find an even more powerful opponent for them. Supporting Xian Island was the best choice. He believed that supporting Xian Island wouldn't let the matter rest after suffering such a huge loss. It would be best if he could get them to help him investigate the truth. It would be even better if he could use supporting Xian Island to destroy the fake hero. After another half a day, his injuries were more or less healed. Yu Qianzhou, who was sitting cross-legged on a pile of dried branches and weeds, started to feel anxious. Why weren't the people from supporting Xian Island here yet? Could it be that they didn't notice the jade archive he had left behind? With the cultivation of Dongfang Chang Ao and the others, it was impossible for them not to notice it. Or was there another reason? Just as he was getting a little impatient, dozens of figures descended from the sky into the valley. Yu Qianzhou held his breath and focused. His eyes lit up when he saw them. The one leading them was Dongfang Chang Ao. He counted them carefully. Oh my! They actually sent out 50 tribulation-passing elders from the Pavilion of Cultivation at once. This was going to be interesting. Chapter 243. Yu Qianzhou's face revealed a proud expression. The fact that the hero was able to sneak into supporting Xian Island and commit murder without anyone noticing clearly attracted the attention of supporting Xian Island. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sent 50 tribulation-passing elders at once. If it were any other sect investigating this matter, they would definitely do it in secret. However, look at this hero. He didn't need to be sneaky. 50 people were openly here. It was obvious that they were prepared for a fight. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sent so many old fellows. Dongfang Chang Ao nodded at the crowd. Dozens of people immediately flashed in all directions and looked around. Yu Qianqiu quickly held his breath and hid among the weeds and withered trees like a hibernating animal. As expected, several divine senses swept past him. If it weren't for the mysterious effects of the golden pearl, he would have been discovered long ago. The group of people clearly didn't find anything suspicious. They gathered together again. Yu Qianqiu focused on their every move. Dongfang Chang Ao strolled to the front of a mountain wall that was overgrown with vegetation. He exclaimed softly, "Elder Gongsun, you're an expert in formations. Come and take a look. Are there any formations or mechanisms here?" He was at the place indicated on the Jade Archive. If it weren't for the mark on the archive, he wouldn't have believed that there was something hidden here. He couldn't tell the difference between this place and the rest of the valley. The old man who was called walked over. After carefully examining the surrounding terrain, he pressed his hand on the mountain wall. He plucked a white ivy flower and sniffed it. He frowned and asked, "Elder Dongfang, are you sure this is the place?" "Elder Gongsun, you mean?" Dongfang Chang Ao's expression darkened. "Could it be that we've been fooled? There's nothing here." The people of supporting Xian Island looked at each other. They had mobilized so many people to come here. Could it be that they had been fooled? Yu Qianqiu, who could vaguely hear their conversation, found it strange. Logically, it shouldn't be possible. There was no reason for the alluring beauty to give him a fake map. At this moment, one of the people in the group walked over with a sword in his hand and said, "Maybe there's something behind this mountain wall. Let me cut it open to take a look." "Wait." Elder Gongsun stared blankly at the mountain wall. He pushed his hand and said, "There is something strange about this mountain wall, look." Everyone looked in the direction of his finger and saw a white flower swaying in the wind on the green vine. But it was very ordinary. There were a lot of green vines and flowers in the valley. Everyone looked for a while but couldn't see anything. Seeing that no one understood, Elder Gongsun shook his head and said, "Watch carefully this time. I will pluck this flower, pay attention to the green vine's reaction." After saying that, he casually plucked the white flower. After hearing his words, everyone paid close attention to the green vines on the mountain wall. After waiting for a while, a white flower suddenly appeared on the entwined green vine. It was still at the position where it was plucked. This time, everyone clicked their tongues in wonder. Someone exclaimed, "Could it be that this green vine is some sort of natural spiritual treasure? Could it be that the Jade Archive is a treasure map?" "No, that's not right." Elder Gongsun shook his head, as if remembering something. Dongfang Chang Ao asked, "Elder Gongsun, what's not right?" Elder Gongsun regained his senses and sniffed the flower in his hand. He looked at the crowd and paused before saying, "It is rumored that in ancient times, there was a formation known as the North Pole Illusory Spirit Formation. The place where this formation was set up is extremely deceptive. It can absorb the spiritual energy of the heavens and earth and transform it into an illusion, merging with the surrounding scenery. No matter how high your cultivation base is, it will be difficult to discover the location of the formation. If I'm not wrong, someone must have laid down this formation. Fortunately, we have the map on the Jade Archive to guide us. Otherwise, no one would be able to tell that the scenery here is an illusion. But logically speaking, this formation should have been lost a long time ago. Why would it appear here? Humph. Looks like there's something special behind this mountain wall. Otherwise, who would set up a long-lost ancient formation here?" Dongfang Chang Ao turned around and asked, "Elder Gongsun, do you have a way to break this formation? If it doesn't work, we'll just have to break it open by force. I'd like to see what kind of shameful things are hidden behind it." Elder Gongsun shook his head and smiled. For this formation to be famous in ancient times, it naturally has its own unique features. Although it doesn't possess any offensive capabilities, it is a top-notch defensive formation. Once the North Pole Illusory Spirit Formation is set up, it can merge with the spiritual energy of the heavens and earth, allowing it to grow and multiply endlessly. Just like the flower I plucked earlier, it will grow back after you pluck it. Similarly, once you break it open, it will immediately return to its original state. Furthermore, the more powerful the attack, the faster it will recover. Unless there's no longer enough spiritual energy in the world to support its operation, or the person who set up the formation decided to remove it. Gong-sun, what kind of joke is this? How can the spiritual energy of the heavens and earth be cut off? It's even more impossible for the person who set up the formation to remove it. Do you think we're guests? Do you think they'll open the door to welcome us? The person who said he wanted to break open the formation said angrily. If this formation is so powerful, then wouldn't we have come here for nothing? Another person said. Elder Gong-sun, do you have a way to break this formation? Dongfang Chang Ao saw the confident smile on his face and couldn't help but ask. This formation may be able to stop others, but it can't stop me. Elder Gong-sun smiled a little proudly. Years ago, I accidentally came up with a useless formation. Because it wasn't very useful, I never really used it. I didn't think I'd be able to use it today. As soon as he said this, someone asked curiously, formation. What formation can break this ancient formation? My formation can't trap people, nor can it stop people, nor can it hurt people. But once it's set up, it can drain all the spiritual energy in the formation and cut off the spiritual energy from the outside. If you set up my formation outside the North Pole Illusion Spirit Formation, what do you think will happen? After Elder Gong-sun said this proudly, everyone immediately understood what he meant. Someone laughed, amazing. This is too amazing. Gong-sun, you're really something. You actually came up with such a formation. Dongfang Chang Ao couldn't help but smile. It seemed like it was a coincidence that he was dragged here today. So, he raised his hand, Elder Gong-sun, I'll leave this to you. Do you need any help? No need, just watch the show. Elder Gong-sun waved his hand at everyone. After looking around, he started to take things out from his storage bag. As his body flashed, he started to get busy in a radius of 10 meters with the mountain wall as the center. Yu Qiancho, who was hiding not far away, heard everything inside. Supporting Xian Island definitely didn't get it by luck. They really had all kinds of talents. This was heaven's will. Fortunately, the supporting Immortal Island was involved. Otherwise, no one would be able to break this formation. Not long after, Elder Gong-sun finished setting up the formation. After everyone retreated 10 meters away, he formed a hand seal and shot a white light into the formation. He shouted, "Activate!" There was a fluctuation in the formation, and there was a hissing sound. Spiritual energy condensed into a white mist in front of the mountain wall, slowly spreading in all directions. Everyone nodded. The formation that Elder Gong-sun set up was obviously working. The vines and flowers in front of the mountain wall started to lose their original luster, and their colors gradually dimmed. Under Gongsun's control, the formation spun faster and faster, and the speed at which spiritual energy was extracted also increased. A few hours later, the scene in the formation started to shake, and a faintly discernible cave in front of the mountain wall appeared before everyone's eyes. The group exchanged glances, thinking that there was indeed a mystery in there. Dongfang Chang Ao waved his hand solemnly, and everyone went on high alert. Chapter 244. After the spiritual energy in the array was sucked dry, a 3-meter-wide hole appeared before everyone's eyes. Immediately, 2 people dashed into the hole and observed it. Then, they nodded to everyone. The group of old fellows carefully went in, leaving the remaining people to guard the hole. Damn it! Yu Qianzhou cursed in his heart. If they all went in, he could sneak in behind them to see what kind of place it was. Who knew that not long after, the sounds of fighting could be heard coming from inside. Then Dongfang Chang Ao shouted, "How dare you, evildoer!" The expressions of the people outside the hole changed. They nodded at each other and dashed in. The sounds of fighting became more intense. Even Yu Qianzhou, who was hiding in the mountain opposite, could feel the ground shaking. Evildoer. Yu Qianzhou mumbled to himself. He pulled down the black mask on his head, revealing only his eyes. Just as he was about to sneak in to watch the show, he was suddenly attracted by a place. From his point of view, the scene at the corner of the valley suddenly fluctuated, and another cave entrance suddenly appeared on the mountain wall. Two old men in white scuttled out and looked around. Then, they nodded at the hole. Then, one of them dashed out and said something to the two old men before flying away. "It's really you." Yu Qianzhou sneered to himself. The person who flew away was none other than Hundred Flowers Palace's Yan Juixing. He was also heading in the direction of the Hundred Flowers Valley. After the hole that appeared suddenly returned to its original state, the two old men in white flashed to the hole that the people from supporting Immortals Island had entered. They stood guard in front of the hole and took out a shiny silver chain from their storage bags, holding it horizontally in their hands. Upon closer inspection, one could see that the two ends of the chain seemed to be tied with two sharp claws. Yu Qianzhou secretly pondered about their origins. Judging from their clothes and weapons, he had not seen or heard of them in the cultivation world. Listening to the sounds of fierce fighting in the cave and the occasional blood-curdling screams, he didn't know which side had won. However, the people in the cave were not to be trifled with. Otherwise, they would not have been able to fight against the 50 crossing calamity stage experts from the supporting Immortal Island for such a long time. The people from Fuxian Island probably weren't feeling any better. From Dongfang Chang Ao's angry roars, it was obvious that he was like a wounded lion. Yu Qianzhou shook his head inwardly. This Fuxian Island must have been too arrogant in the cultivation world. They dared to barge into other people's lair without any backup. They didn't even consider that those fellows who could annihilate on Kwangsung were not easy to deal with. They deserved to learn from their mistakes. The sounds of fighting became clearer and clearer as it approached the entrance of the cave. As soon as the elders of the supporting Immortal Island shot out, they were greeted by two sharp claws that swept across the sky. The silver dragon brandished its claws, the light and shadow were cold, stirring up the entire valley with echoes of "hua-hua." After a few violent sounds of metal clashing, the few people who were just about to rush out were forced back. It's over. Supporting Immortal Island had suffered a great loss this time. They closed the door to beat the dog and attacked from both sides. Yu Qianzhou clearly saw that the few people who had just shot out of the cave were already injured. Hi! A shout came from the cave, and suddenly, a dazzling golden light shot out from the cave entrance. Bang! With a loud sound, the cave entrance suddenly collapsed. Yu Qianzhou, who was hiding on the other side of the mountain, was speechless. Oh my! What is this? It actually caused half of the mountain to collapse. Immediately after, a golden light shot out from the collapsed area, causing the earth to collapse and rocks to fly. A figure dashed out from the collapsed area, and it was Dongfang Chang Ao. The two white-robed elders outside immediately pounced over, and the two silver dragon claws clawed out from the left and right. At this moment, Dongfang Chang Ao was not holding a sword in his hand, but a golden spear. With a shake of his hand, the golden spear's spearhead suddenly enlarged by 1,000 times. The spearhead was the size of half a door, and it swept towards the incoming chain claws with a dazzling golden light. Ding dang! The two silver dragons were cut into pieces by the sharp golden light. High-grade offensive magic treasure. The two of them exclaimed at the same time. However, this was only the first spear, and Dongfang Chang, Ao's second spear swept over. Go! As one of them shouted, he quickly dodged. Without a weapon, how could he block the attack of a high-grade magic treasure with his bare hands? The other person's reaction seemed to be a little slower, and he was hit by the spear's golden light. Ah! Accompanied by a scream, the person was split into two and fell down. Dongfang Chang Ao brandished his spear like a god of death. He stood in the air and glanced at the hole he opened. As soon as more than 10 of his fellow sect members flew out, a silver chain claw flew out from the hole and grabbed towards the last person who flew out. Dongfang Chang Ao swung the golden spear in his hand, and blocked the flying claw for his fellow sect member. The chain claw wrapped around the spear's handle where the spear's head connected. He raised the spear, and the owner of the chain claw flew out from the hole together with the chain. Who? The golden light whistled and attacked. When that person saw the situation clearly, he was almost scared out of his wits. He immediately let go of the chain and wanted to escape, but he was still too late. The golden light flashed, and the broken chain claw sprinkled a rain of blood. Quickly return to the sect, you guys go first. I will cover you. Dongfang Chang Ao shouted with grief and indignation. Out of the 50 people that came out, only a dozen or so were left. How could he not feel sad? The remaining people from Fuxian Island did not say anything and immediately ran away. He was the only one left to guard the hole with his spear. Almost every spear attack did not miss, and he killed everyone that came out. The eyes of the white-robed elder who survived the spear turned red, but he did not dare to underestimate the sharpness of the high-grade magic treasure. Good treasure. Good treasure. Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up, and he stared at the golden spear in Dongfang Chang Ao's hand. The people under the hole seemed to know that it was too difficult to charge out, so no one came out. Dongfang Chang Ao was still guarding there. Yu Qianzhou secretly felt something was wrong, and he looked at the hole that Yan Zhuixing came out from. Sure enough, the hole was already wide open. Swoosh swoosh. Dozens of people in white flew out, and immediately surrounded Dongfang Chang Ao. The latter was shocked. He did not expect there to be a back door in this cave. He was not a rigid person, so he moved, and with a few spear attacks, he broke through the encirclement, and flew away quickly. A group of people chased after him. Seeing that Dongfang Chang Ao was flying in the direction of the 100 Flowers Valley, Yu Qianzhou thought that if he could escape to the 100 Flowers Valley, it would be a way to save his life. Yan Zhuixing always did things sneakily, and he reckoned that this group of people would not dare to break into the 100 Flowers Valley. Moreover, there was the Cultivation Alliance there. The valley immediately became empty. Yu Qianzhou looked at the open hole, and he wanted to run in to see, but he did not know if there was anyone inside. Then, he thought that those people would definitely come back, regardless of whether they could chase Dongfang Chang Ao or not. So, he gave up the idea of taking the risk. He thought to himself, supporting Xian Island has lost more than 30 tribulation stage elders this time, and I don't know what will happen next. I'd better continue to watch the show. I just need to help at the critical moment. Yu Qianzhou glanced at the corpses in the valley, and he suddenly froze on the spot. When he came to his senses, he rubbed his eyes, and hurriedly jumped to the place where the battle took place. He saw that the people in white killed by Dongfang Chang Ao were all gone, and there were animal corpses on the ground. To be exact, they should be the corpses of white foxes. This immediately made him think of something. Chapter 245. Little Snow's 4 treasures belonged to the Fox clan, and Yan Zhuixing had auctioned them off. There had to be a connection between the two. Were the corpses of the Snow Fox clan in the extreme north? Yu Qianqiu thought about it again and again, but he still pulled Bai Suzhen out to verify it. Seeing the corpses of her clansmen on the ground, Bai Suzhen's face flashed a trace of desolation. Yu Qianqiu understood from her expression and didn't ask any more. He casually flicked out a dozen fireballs and instantly turned the corpses of the Fox clan into ashes. After Yu Qianqiu roughly explained what had happened, Bai Suzhen didn't say anything else and hurriedly entered the cave. Yu Qianqiu had no choice but to follow her in. After going deeper, he realized that this was a spirit stone mine that had been abandoned for many years. It was a pity that he didn't see a single living person. In a large mine, the corpses of the supporting Immortal Island and the Fox clan were all over the ground. Bai Suzhen looked around and actually found a dying Fox clan member. Seeing Bai Suzhen supporting the elder and using her demonic essence to save him, Yu Qianqiu sighed and said, "We can't stay here for long. Let's go back first." When the three of them reappeared, they were already in the earliest bamboo house of Utopia. This was their earliest residence, and there was also House Sanxi's tomb in the backyard. Therefore, this place had become one of the forbidden areas of Utopia. After helping her carry the Fox clan elder to a bamboo bed, Yu Qianqiu couldn't bear to see her anxious look. He took out a rainbow-colored Rui pill and said, "Use this. I believe that as long as he's still breathing, he can be saved." Bai Suzhen was stunned. She knew how precious the Rui pill was. After hesitating for a moment, she still took it and turned around to help the dying elder consume it. After doing what needed to be done, she could only leave it to fate. If even the Rui pill that could bring the dead back to life couldn't save him, then there was nothing she could do. Seeing her staring at the old man on the bamboo bed in a daze, Yu Qianqiu walked to her side and comforted her. "Sister, don't worry. He'll be fine. Do you know him?" "He's my uncle." Bai Suzhen stuttered. Yu Qianqiu was completely speechless. Thus, the two of them didn't do anything and just quietly guarded the bamboo house. However, the effects of the Rui pill, refined from the Adumbra flower, were truly excellent. A demon that was on the verge of death slowly regained consciousness in less than a day. When he opened his eyes, he saw Bai Suzhen guarding the bedside with a concerned expression. He exclaimed in surprise, "Ling, aren't you dead?" Yu Qianqiu knew that Ling was Bai Suzhen's nickname in the past. "Uncle, it's me." Bai Suzhen smiled sweetly. "Where is this?" The man looked around. When he saw Bai Suzhen's attire, he exclaimed in surprise again, "Little Snow's 4 treasures. Why are they on you?" Bai Suzhen shook her head and didn't answer. Instead, she frowned and asked, "Uncle, why aren't you staying in the clan? Why did you come to the Huaxia Empire?" "It's all because your mother forced us to." The man laughed bitterly and touched the wound on his abdomen that was about to heal. He said blankly, "You saved me." "Not me, he saved you." Bai Suzhen pointed at Yu Qianqiu and said. The man sized up Yu Qianqiu and struggled to get up to thank him. Yu Qianqiu hurriedly pressed him down and said with a smile, "It's nothing. There's no need to be so polite. Just focus on recovering. He's your man." The man was puzzled. Bai Suzhen and Yu Qianqiu looked at each other. Bai Suzhen smiled non-committally, then frowned and said, "Uncle, you said my mother forced you. What's going on?" The man shook his head with a bitter smile and told them what had happened. It turned out that Bai Suzhen's mother, Shui Qingmei, had been forced to step down from the position of clan leader for the sake of her daughter. She had never been reconciled to it, and just 100 years ago, she, who had been accumulating power, had taken back the position of clan leader from the hands of a man. She had then gone on a killing spree within the clan, forcing the male clan leader who had ascended to the position from her hands to lead his people and flee. In the end, they fled to the Huaxia Empire. His name was Shui Qingkong. He was also one of the patriarch's subordinates. Naturally, he also fled to the Huaxia Empire. Yu Qianqiu looked at Bai Suzhen in shock after hearing about the female patriarch's ruthless methods. He thought to himself, your mother is not as gentle as you say. But thinking about it, a mother might show a positive side to her daughter, but how many daughters would say bad things about their mother? Senior, how did you get together with Yan Zhuixing of the 100 Flowers Palace? Why did he auction the 4 treasures? Yu Qianqiu asked. When we came, Yan Zhuixing wasn't even born yet. If there's one, it's with his father, Yan Bugui. Shui Qingkong smiled bitterly and began to tell them what happened after that. The male patriarch of the Fox tribe had originally brought 600 to 700 people with him to escape. But who knew that Bai Suzhen's mother was so cruel and merciless? She wanted to eliminate the root of the problem and sent people to chase after them. The number of people who had been running for their lives had decreased from 6 to 700 to 3 to 400. Only when they had escaped into the territory of another empire did the Fox clan, who had been chasing after them, receive an attack from the local cultivators, allowing the remaining people to survive. But they didn't dare to stay in that empire, so they secretly sneaked into the Huaxia Empire. After hiding in the Huaxia Empire, they wanted to go back and take revenge, but they weren't Shui Qingmei's match. They wanted to expand their forces there, but the human cultivators were very against the Yao race. If they weren't careful, they might bring disaster upon themselves. Just when everyone was feeling disheartened, Yan Bugui, who had married Bai Hua Fairy, appeared. It turned out that Yan Bugui had accidentally obtained a demon-revealing mirror made by a divine craftsman. When he met them, he found out that they were actually a group of fox demons. Unlike the others, Yan Bugui didn't reject the Yao race, he even befriended them and helped them as much as he could. When Yan Bugui found out about their origins, as well as that they knew the long-lost primordial spirit stripping technique, he immediately came up with a perfect revenge plan for them. That was to control the human cultivators and gather enough power to return to the extreme north for revenge. Hearing Shui Qingkong's explanation, Yu Qianqiu doubtfully asked, is Yan Bugui really that kind? That's right. Back then, we were blinded by our hatred. By the time we realized it, it was already too late, Shui Qingkong sighed. After realizing that he was using us, we immediately wanted to turn against him, but we didn't know that he had already poisoned us with the 10,000 demons bone-adhering poison. Once it was activated, we felt like we were better off dead than alive. From then on, we had to take the antidote once a month. If anyone dared to disobey his orders, the patriarch died from this poison. The scene of his death was too horrible to even look at. All his bones were melted away by the poison, leaving him lying on the ground like a pile of mud. We watched as he slowly died of exhaustion. The two of them looked at each other. They knew that the patriarch he was talking about was the male patriarch who had led them to this place. They didn't expect that he was already dead. Seeing that he still looked fearful, Bai Suzhen frowned and said, "Uncle, you don't have to worry. I gave you the Rui pill refined from the Adumbra flower to heal your wounds. The poison in your body should be neutralized by now." The Adumbra flower. Shui Qingkong cried out in surprise. She immediately circulated her energy to check her body. Sure enough, the poison in her bones was gone. She smiled in pleasant surprise. Bai Suzhen turned to Yu Qianqiu and asked, "The pill recipe Jade Archive seems to contain the antidote that can completely neutralize the bone-adhering poison, right?" "That's right. However, we're still missing a spiritual herb as the main ingredient. However, the Jade Archive says that it should grow in the demon domain." Yu Qianqiu knew that she wanted to help her clansmen neutralize the bone-adhering poison. However, the Adumbra flower was too precious. It would be a waste to use it just to neutralize the poison. Not to mention, not all of those people were her uncle. He rubbed his nose and smiled, "Sister, don't worry. Leave the matter of neutralizing the poison in your clansmen to me. I'll make a trip to the demon domain someday and ask the ghost general to help me look for it. Bai Suzhen nodded. Words of gratitude were no longer necessary between the two of them. However, Yu Qianqiu suddenly thought of something frightening. He couldn't help but frown. Senior Shui, you mean to say that 100 years ago, you started using the great art of extracting primordial spirit on Yan Bugui? Doesn't that mean that he has been secretly accumulating his strength for 100 years? Chapter 246. Shui Qingkong was still immersed in the excitement of getting rid of the poison and didn't hear what he said. Bai Suzhen pulled him and repeated Yu Qianqiu's words. Shui Qingkong nodded gratefully and said, "It's been 150 years, and I've recruited a lot of people. I'm afraid there are more than 10,000 of them now. The weakest is at the nascent soul stage, and there are more than 200 who are at the tribulation stage. Yan Bugui's strength shouldn't be weak." What do you mean by shouldn't be weak? Yu Qianqiu exclaimed and couldn't help but roll his eyes at him. Yan Bugui's strength is almost on par with Fuxian Island, and you call that not weak? If I have such strength, I can do whatever I want in the cultivation world. Why does he have so many tribulation stage cultivators? Yu Qianqiu asked, how many of them are at the final stage of the tribulation stage? We secretly helped him catch them, and after we caught them, we removed the control of their Yuan Shin. Most of them are rogue cultivators. Some of them were at the final stage of the nascent soul stage when they were caught, but after so many years of cultivation, they have also reached the tribulation stage. There are 4 of them at the final stage of the tribulation stage, Shui Qingkong explained. Are you included in the 200 tribulation stage cultivators? Yes, we are more than half of them, and the 4 of them are also our people. Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up and he quickly calculated in his mind. If this group of Fox clan members who were controlled by Yan Bugui's poison were suddenly detoxified, how would they react? It seemed that he had to go to the realm of monsters as soon as possible. Although he had a plan, he still had some questions in his mind, so he frowned and asked, where are Yan Bugui's people? Why did Yan Juixing sell the 5 treasures made by the divine craftsman? Shui Qingkong felt relaxed after getting rid of the poison that had possessed him for 100 years. He was very grateful to Yu Qianqiu, so he answered immediately, except for those who are used frequently, the rest are hidden on an island in the sea. As for why they are selling 5 treasures, I don't know. But judging from a few things, he was afraid that he didn't have enough spirit stones. Originally, we would capture anyone who had stepped into the core formation stage, but we stopped doing so 50 years ago. Normally, we wouldn't touch anyone below the nascent soul stage, but now, we won't capture anyone below the late nascent soul stage. Once, I heard Yan Juixing sigh. He said that the cost of 10,000 people wasn't a small number. Not long after that, he sold the 5 treasures made by the divine craftsman. And this time, they mobilized more than 400 people from overseas to attack on Kwangsung. Among them, they used 100 cultivators who were in the tribulation transcending stage, mainly to rush for spirit stones. They robbed on Kwangsung of more than 100 million high-grade spirit stones. Bastard! Yu Qianqiu cursed under his breath. He thought, I worked so hard to loot 21 spirit stone mines, but I only got 10 million high-grade spirit stones. In the end, On Kwangsung's strength was split, and the 100-flower palace benefited from it. Damn it! Yu Qianqiu frowned. If I ask you to take me to the island, can you find the way? Yes. Shui Qingkong said without hesitation. Bai Suzhen frowned, but she didn't say anything. He is so powerful, but he still has to endure. It seems that Yan Bugui's ambition is to conquer the entire cultivation world. Good. Rest well, I won't disturb you anymore. Yu Qianqiu nodded with satisfaction, then said to Bai Suzhen, Sister, I have something to do. You two take your time." With that, he disappeared. Xue Qingkong was taken aback and exclaimed, "Ling, He is also at the last phase of the tribulation passing stage." Bai Suzhen's frown didn't loosen. Instead, she asked, "Uncle, if I wanted your natal primordial spirit, would you agree?" "What do you mean?" Xue Qingkong was shocked. Bai Suzhen's figure flickered like a phantom, and her fingers formed into a claw as she grabbed onto his head. A white light wrapped around his head, and when she retracted her hand, a small person that looked like Xue Qingkong, who was only a few inches tall, was caught. Bai Suzhen put the natal yuanshan into a spirit stone and put it in her storage pouch. She looked at Xue Qingkong, who was crying on the bed inside. "Uncle, don't blame me." Since he said that, he must have planned to go overseas. "I can stop him, but I won't. Uncle, do you know? His place in my heart is no lighter than my mother's. He is the most important person in my life. I will not allow anyone to bring danger to him. Don't worry, Uncle. When I think he is safe, I will return your natal yuanshan to you." Although her words were sincere, Xue Qingkong was currently suffering from soul-deep pain. Coupled with the injuries on her body, how could she hear what she was saying? Yu Qianqiu didn't go anywhere else, but went to the ethereal palace to find Chu Ping. When the attack on Onquangsung was mentioned, he remembered that he promised Chu Ping to bring her master here. Now that Onquangsung was gone, who knew if her master was still alive or not? As the saying goes, it's better to get the pain over with as soon as possible. At most, it would be over with time. At that time, little Wu Chou was playing with Chu Ping, and the little guy seemed to like this beautiful sister-in-law very much. When Yu Qianqiu drove him out, he was quite reluctant. This caused Chu Pinger's face to turn red. Who asked Yu Qianqiu to rarely see people? Even if he did, he would pester her to do that kind of thing the moment he came. She could not help but misunderstand Yu Qianqiu's current actions. When Yu Qianqiu told her the bad news that Onquangsung was killed, Chu Ping was stunned as if she was struck by lightning. Yu Qianqiu didn't comfort her, but turned around and left. Now was the time for her to vent her anger, and no one could persuade her. After walking out of the ethereal palace with a heavy heart, he stood at the top of the mountain and saw a couple holding hands on the mountainside. It was his parents who were climbing the mountain. A gratified smile appeared on his face. It was his long-cherished wish to let his wife and family live a happy life. Looking into the distance, he could see a circle of purple in the sky, but after he broke through to the middle stage of the core formation realm, he couldn't see it anymore. Yu Qianqiu let out a breath and murmured, "Ping, Onquangsung's death might be hard for you to accept, but it's not necessarily a bad thing for me. Maybe I'm too selfish, but I really don't want you to live in the shadows of Onquangsung and your master for the rest of your life. You're my woman, not anyone's disciple." When Yu Changgue and his wife reached the top of the mountain, Yu Qianqiu told them about Master Chu Ping's misfortune. He begged his parents to comfort her after she calmed down, and he told Bai Suzhen through his divine sense. After making arrangements for Chu Ping, he went to the border of Utopia and took out the Green Destiny Sword. It was also a high-grade offensive magic treasure. The image of Dongfang Chang Ao being invincible with the spear in his hand was still vivid in his mind. Outside the Hundred Flowers Valley, Yu Qianqiu walked in openly with the Hundred Flowers Valley's access token. As he expected, although his arrival caused quite a commotion in the Hundred Flowers Valley, it was nothing much. Onquangsung had been killed, and no one was offering a bounty for his capture anymore. He believed that those itinerant cultivators wouldn't find trouble with him for no reason. The supporting Immortal Island hadn't even solved their own problems, so they wouldn't care about him. The righteous and demonic sects were in a cold war, and no one would act rashly. As for the ones who dared to touch him, it was probably the Daluo sect. However, they still had to give the 100 Flowers Valley some face, so they wouldn't touch him here. So what if they did touch him? Since he dared to appear openly, he wasn't afraid of the Daluo sect. What he was afraid of was that the Daluo sect wouldn't find trouble with him. From today onwards, he didn't need to be sneaky anymore. Otherwise, once the troubles of the various sects were solved, he would have to hide for the rest of his life. This was the time to make a name for himself. Only by making those who wanted to deal with him fear him could he live openly in the future. Walking on the streets of the 100 Flowers Valley, Yu Qianqiu let out a depressed breath. The Daluo sect hopes that you can come quickly. I, Yu Qianqiu, need to ignite my anger. I need to ignite your Daluo sect to achieve my glory. Chapter 247. He wore a fitting black robe, carried a long sword on his back, and had a storage bag on his waist. This was the standard attire of a cultivator. It was the first time that he had appeared in a public place outside of Supporting Immortals Island. He was walking on the streets of the 100 Flowers Valley. Yu Qianqiu is here. Someone recognized him, and the news spread quickly. Many people came to see what was going on. On both sides of the street, countless people looked at this guy who looked like he was taking a leisurely stroll. Everyone was amazed. They said that he was extremely daring, offended the Daluo sect, and dared to show his face without the protection of Supporting Immortals Island. Yu Qianqiu glanced at both sides of the street, and there were many familiar faces. There were also many people in the Cultivation Alliance who were familiar with him, but they didn't know whether to greet him or not. Especially the people from Supporting Immortals Island, who were disciples of the same sect as him. Everyone had the opportunity to stay in the Cultivation Pavilion after going through many hardships and competitions. Why were they acting like strangers when they met again? Xionghui had some friendship with Yu Qianqiu, but he didn't know whether to greet him or not under the watchful eyes of the crowd. Yu Qianqiu glanced at him and smiled at him. Xionghui smiled bitterly and shook his head. Dong Guisu, who was setting up a stall, was shocked when he heard that Yu Qianqiu was here. He threw his stall aside and hurried over. He saw Yu Qianqiu, and Yu Qianqiu also saw him. However, Yu Qianqiu looked away as if he didn't know him. The people from the 4 major families were also shocked when they heard that Yu Qianqiu was here. The 4 major families were looking for him everywhere. After confirming that it was him, the communication formations in the 4 shops were activated, and the news of Yu Qianqiu's appearance was sent back. Waha! Brother Yu, you finally showed up. Qiu Wuyuan laughed as he walked over from the other end of the street. As he walked, he pointed at a group of people behind him and said, "Old brother, I'm here to welcome you with my fellows from the Devil Dao." The group of people behind him also laughed happily. As soon as he said that, the expressions of the Righteous Path's people changed, especially the people from Supporting Immortal Island. If the outstanding disciple of the number 1 sect of the Righteous Path joined the Devil Path, then Supporting Immortal Island would really be criticized behind their backs. After meeting up with Qiu Wuyuan and the rest, Yu Qianqiu cupped his fists and smiled. You flatter me, you flatter me. The people of the demonic path were like stars surrounding the moon. They surrounded him in the center, talking to him one after another. He naturally responded, as if they were old friends meeting. Brother Yu. Someone shouted from afar. Everyone looked over and saw a few people following behind Yan Zhuixing, walking over quickly. Yu Qianqiu walked out of the crowd and cupped his fists from afar. Brother Yan, long time no see. The two of them walked over and hugged each other passionately, as if their relationship was very close. The performance here was not over yet. 4 people came out from the side of the street and bowed to Yu Qianqiu together, by clan, Jing clan, Tan clan, and Wu clan, under the orders of the clan heads, respectfully invite Mr. Yu to visit the 4 major clans. Saying that, the 4 of them took out their invitations. Yu Qianqiu understood the meaning of the four major clans. They knew that he was here and were afraid that something bad would happen to him. So, they purposely came to suppress him in front of everyone. He smiled and received the invitations. He cupped his fists and said, "Send my regards to the four clan heads. I will definitely visit them in the future." The four of them acknowledged and left. The people in the surroundings couldn't stop clicking their tongues. This Yu Qianqiu might have been expelled from supporting Immortal Island, but he was still doing very well. The supporting Immortal Island's disciples in the crowd had an indescribable feeling. Some of them had already left quietly to report what happened here to Quan Deming. Qiu Weiyuan twirled his beard and smiled. This brat's connections were quite wide. He even managed to hook up with the clan heads of the four major clans. If he could pull this brat into the 10,000 demons, it would only be beneficial for the 10,000 demons. Not only him, but the various demonic sects and Yan Zhuixing also had the same thought. Hee. Brother you didn't give me face when I invited you for a drink last time. This time, don't reject me again. Qiu Weiyuan chuckled. He was referring to the time when Yu Qianqiu hadn't been expelled from supporting Immortal Island. At that time, he was concerned about the feud between the righteous and demonic sects, so he didn't force Yu Qianqiu. Naturally, he didn't have to worry about that this time. "I'll do as you say." Yu Qianqiu cupped his fists and said. The people in the surroundings were pondering. They reckoned that it was only a matter of time before Yu Qianqiu joined the demonic sections. "Senior Qiu, that's not right." Yan Zhuixing suddenly interrupted. "How can we let Senior Qiu treat us in our 100 Flowers Palace's territory? Today, I'll be the host at 100 Flowers Palace to welcome Brother Yu. Why don't you all come and drink with us?" Once he said that, the demonic sects cheered. Qiu Weiyuan smiled and didn't say anything. If it was someone else, he would probably retort. However, Yan Zhuixing was different. He was the son of his senior brother Yan Bugue. Yu Qianqiu looked at Yan Zhuixing with a smile. However, he was muttering in his heart, "Damn it. You're so poor that you have to rob others. Why are you still pretending to be generous?" Just as the bustling crowd was rushing towards 100 Flowers Palace, another group of people walked over. When Yu Qianqiu saw them, he was instantly amused. It was another old acquaintance. However, this old acquaintance wouldn't treat him to a drink. It was Luo Xiaohan, who he had fought at Limu House on Hat Island. At this moment, he was leading a group of Daluo sect disciples over with a sinister smile. Everyone knew why Luo Xiaohan was here. The demonic sects always worshipped the strong. Everyone had the mentality of watching a show. They wanted to see how Yu Qianqiu would deal with it. They wanted to see if he lived up to his reputation. Yu Qianqiu suddenly sighed to Yan Zhuixing, who was beside him. "Brother Yan, it would be great if all the spoiled brats in the cultivation world were as smart as you. However, they are all reckless." Yan Zhuixing looked at him blankly. He didn't know if Luo Xiaohan was complimenting him or if he already knew something. When enemies met, confrontation was inevitable. Luo Xiaohan smiled sinisterly. "Yu Qianqiu, you haven't forgotten about me, right? Hee. I thought you were going to hide for the rest of your life and that I wouldn't have the chance to see you again. I didn't expect you to be so daring. You still dare to show yourself without the support of supporting Immortal Island. You're really courting death." His tone was sinister and filled with killing intent. The humiliation that Yu Qianqiu had brought him could only be washed away with his blood. Otherwise, he would be a laughing stock for the rest of his life. "I also didn't expect you to have the guts to show yourself. The saying enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road is right. It's fate that I can run into you under such circumstances." Yu Qianqiu joked. He immediately shouted, "Bastard, hurry up and make way for me." If you continue to be so long-winded, do you believe that I will still dare to beat you up even without the support of supporting Immortal Island? The demonic sects cooperated and burst into laughter. Some of the onlookers couldn't help but laugh too. Luo Xiaohan's body trembled. His expression twitched and he couldn't speak. He had the urge to attack. The people beside him quickly pulled him back. Yan Zhuixing frowned. Brother Luo, this is my 100 Flowers Valley. It's not a place for you to settle your personal grudges. I hope you can abide by the rules here. Chapter 248. Hee hee. Yan, do you think your 100 Flowers Valley's rules can interfere with my Daluo sect? Luo Xiaohan was so angry that his eyes were red. Qiu Weiyuan's face darkened when he heard the words Yan. Yan Zhuixing's eyes flashed coldly as he said in a low voice, "What do you want then?" "Young palace master, don't stoop to his level." A clear voice was heard. Everyone looked over and saw that it was Daluo sect's principal elder in the Cultivation Alliance, Zhu Xianxian. Yan Zhuixing cupped his hands and greeted, "Elder Zhu." Luo Xiaohan held his breath and greeted, "Martial Uncle Zhu." When Zhu Xianxian and Qiu Weiyuan met, they both snorted and turned their heads away, too lazy to look at each other. This was the customary greeting between the righteous and demonic sections. Zhu Xianxian glanced at Yu Qianqiu before turning back to Luo Xiaohan, frowning. "The 100 Flowers Palace is the owner of this place. Why are you causing trouble here? Don't you know the basic rules? Can't you talk after you leave the 100 Flowers Valley?" Everyone understood what he meant. Yu Qianqiu couldn't hide in the 100 Flowers Valley for the rest of his life. If he wanted revenge, he could do whatever he wanted once he left the 100 Flowers Valley. Luo Xiaohan's anger subsided. He cupped his hands and said, "Martial uncle, you're right." He turned to Yu Qianqiu and snorted, "What's the point of arguing? Leave the 100 Flowers Valley now if you're so capable." I forgot that you, Yu Qianqiu, are used to being a coward. I think you first hid in Ongquangsong. Then you went to Fuxian Island. Are you going to hide in the 100 Flowers Valley again? Or are you going to join some demonic sect? Yu Qianqiu sneered, trying to provoke me to leave the 100 Flowers Valley for revenge. Aren't you afraid of getting beaten up? Are you getting bolder because you have the support of your seniors? Gee! Do you really think that sneak attacks are a skill? Luo Xiaohan sneered. Do I need to use my seniors to deal with you? Come out and try if you have the guts. He did not believe that he, a nascent soul stage cultivator, could not defeat a core formation stage cultivator. He had always believed that the reason why he was beaten up on Hat Island was because the opponent had successfully ambushed him. Those from the Grand Immortal sect shared the same sentiments. Everyone was very quiet. They didn't know if Yu Qianqiu would be provoked out of the 100 Flowers Valley. What he didn't know was that Yu Qianqiu was worried about Zhu Xianxian and the other masters in the Crossing Calamity stage. Yu Qianqiu had been waiting for him to say this. Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly and said, "It's not that I don't want to go out, but I'm afraid that I'll kill you when I go out. If the Daluo sect keeps pestering me, I'll be annoyed to death." "Kill me? What a joke." Luo Xiaohan said disdainfully, "If you're afraid, just say it. There's no need to find some high-sounding excuse. This is a personal grudge between us. If you really have the ability to kill me, I can guarantee that the Daluo sect will not trouble you in the future. Today, I'll say this. If you have the guts, follow me out of the 100 Flowers Valley." Yu Qianqiu looked around and said, "Everyone here heard it. This Luo Xiaohan is not going to let me go. If I don't accept his challenge, he will think that I, Yu Qianqiu, am afraid of him. Since that's the case, please be my witnesses. Today, I will fight him outside the 100 Flowers Valley." "Good. Qiu Weiyuan clapped his hands and shouted, "Today is a personal grudge between the two of you. If anyone else dares to interfere, Qiu Weiyuan will be the first to deal with him." He had never seen Yu Qianqiu's capabilities. Today was a rare opportunity. Moreover, Luo Xiaohan himself had said so. It would be a waste not to do him a favor. "Yes, if anyone dares to interfere, we won't let him go." The demonic cultivators joined in. They wanted to see what the famous Yu Qianqiu was capable of. Yan Zhuixing's eyes were filled with suspicion. Why did Yu Qianqiu look like he had dug a pit for Luo Xiaohan to jump into? Zhu Xianxian also frowned. "If that's the case, then let's go. I've been longing for this day for a long time." Luo Xiaohan smiled ferociously. "What's the rush? You don't have to rush to reincarnate. I have some words of advice for you." Yu Qianqiu stared at him and shook his head. He said with infinite melancholy, "I, Yu Qianqiu, have never tasted defeat since my debut. Sigh. Using my all-seeing mystic art to fight you is really making a mountain out of a molehill. How about this? I don't want to take advantage of you, so I'll leave you with these words. Since you said that you don't need the help of the elders, then I'll allow the seniors and juniors of the same generation to help you. I don't have any objections." When the crowd heard him say things like "never tasted defeat" and "all-seeing mystic art," they immediately booed. They all thought to themselves, "So this Yu Qianqiu is a braggart." When they heard the latter part of his words, they immediately felt that this guy was crazy. It was already good enough for a core formation cultivator to defeat a nascent soul cultivator, but he actually wanted them to find helpers. Wasn't this courting death? Qiu Weiyuan and Yan Zhuixing looked at each other. This guy must have a screw loose. It took them so much effort to nail down his words and prevent the others from Daluo's sect from interfering, but now it was ruined by his own words. Zhu Xianxian was also stunned. He thought he had heard wrong. What they didn't know was that Yu Qianqiu, who was in the middle of the situation, was thinking even more. He didn't care about the outcome of this battle. He knew that regardless of whether he won or lost, Daluo's sect would let him off in the open, but they wouldn't let him off in the dark. After all, he didn't have a backer like supporting Immortal Island anymore. Since that was the case, he would rely on his own strength. Those who were kind would be bullied by others. Usually, the more famous a person was, the less people would dare to provoke them, and the less people would dare to bully them. How can a Luo Xiaohan ignite my infamy? Yu Qianqiu ignored the various expressions of the crowd and glanced at the Daluo sect disciples. Arrogant. Luo Xiaohan sneered. Cut the crap. Come out if you have the guts. With that, he took the lead and walked out of the city gate of the 100 Flowers Valley. Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly and followed. Buzz. The entire 100 Flowers Valley was in an uproar. Yu Qianqiu was really going to fight to the death with the son of the Daluo sect master. In an instant, the crowd surged forward and rushed to the city gate, looking for a good spot to watch the battle. Before long, all the streets of the 100 Flowers Valley became empty. Many of the stalls in the market had been taken away, and those that were confiscated had left their stalls. No one was in the mood to do business now. When almost all the people had left the 100 Flowers Valley, Yan Zhuixing and the people from the Devil's sect followed the leisurely Yu Qianqiu to the city gate. After exiting the 100 Flowers Valley, they saw so many people in the originally secluded forest. It was a little abrupt. Luo Xiaohan was waiting in a relatively flat area. The crowd was centered around him. The forest was full of grass and trees, so it was not practical to walk there. The sword on Yu Qianqiu's back popped out and carried him. After landing in front of Luo Xiaohan, he sheathed his sword and looked around. The shopkeepers of the 4 major families were also here. Dongguo Su and his wife also came with a child. Even Fuxian Island's Quan Deming came with a group of people. Just at this moment, Yan Zixia also arrived with an elder with an extraordinary bearing. Yan Zixia still acted as though she did not know him. She did not know who that elder was, but when he landed beside Yan Zhuixing and Qiu Wuyuan, both of them were extremely respectful towards him. Could it be that this person was Yan Bugui? With a clang, Luo Xiaohan rose into the sky with his mid-nascent soul cultivation. He stared down below and sneered, his expression full of contempt. Yu Qinzhou's gaze was fixed on Hong Qi, who was beside Dong Guosu. He then raised his head and looked at the sneering guy in the sky. The sword was unsheathed and carried him to the same height. Luo Xiaohan was amused when he saw him riding on the sword empty-handed. He thought, "You're courting death. How dare you come up empty-handed?" Only the people from Fuxian Island knew that it wasn't the case. Yu Qianzhou could not control a flying sword. As expected, when a pile of flying swords flew out of Yu Qianzhou's storage pouch and filled the sky with an imposing aura, they formed an umbrella behind him. Luo Xiaohan's expression froze, and he couldn't smile anymore. Most of the people around were shocked. It was the first time they saw someone controlling so many flying swords at the same time. No wonder he was so arrogant. They didn't know how powerful they were. Zhu Xianxian frowned and began to secretly transmit his voice to the Daluo sect disciples beside him. Yu Qianzhou said with an expressionless face, "Shall we start now?" It was the first time Luo Xiaohan saw someone who could control so many flying swords. To be honest, he was shocked. After calming himself down, he sneered, "It's just a facade." As he spoke, the flying sword in his hand suddenly shot toward his opponent. "Whether it's a facade or not, you'll know once you try." Yu Qianzhou didn't mind his sudden attack at all. He quietly stood on his sword and flicked his finger. 10 flying swords flashed out of the sword umbrella behind him and quickly went to meet the flying swords that were shooting at him. Chapter 249. Clang, clang. With a flash of cold light, the 10 flying swords Yu Qianzhou had released immediately entangled the opponent's flying sword in the air, producing a series of ear-piercing sounds. However, the difference in cultivation between the two was too great. Luo Xiaohan formed a seal with his fingers, and the flying sword spun in the air, bouncing off the entangled flying sword. With a whoosh, it once again shot toward the opponent. "Go, combine." With a flick of his fingers, another 10 flying swords flew out from the sword umbrella on Yu Qianzhou's back. He brought his palms together again, and the 10 flying swords merged into one, fiercely colliding with the oncoming sword. Clang! The oncoming sword's momentum was halted. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yu Qianzhou once again joined his palms together and shouted, "Combine!" The 10 flying swords that had been bounced off earlier merged back into one, quickly striking the middle section of the opponent's flying sword. Bang! However, the opponent's sword only sank a little, not flying off. "You're overestimating yourself." Luo Xiaohan sneered. His fingers formed a seal, and the flying sword bounced into the air, whistling through the air as it slashed at one of the combined swords. Bang! Yu Qianzhou's mind shook, and the combined sword was immediately scattered. Before he could even stabilize his mind, the opponent's flying sword struck another combined sword. With a loud bang, Yu Qianzhou's body swayed, and he almost fell off his sword. Who was stronger and who was weaker could be seen in just a few moves. Some from the Daluo sect began to cheer, while many from the demonic path shook their heads and sighed. Next to Dong Guosu and his wife, Hong Qi clenched his small fists. Despite his young age, he knew that his master had suffered a loss. This won't do. The difference in cultivation between the two sides is too great. Yu Qianzhou was secretly startled, but he forced himself to calm down and called back the 20 scattered flying swords. He spread his arms and waved them, shouting, "Go!" More than 90 flying swords whistled through the air in a cone shape. Luo Xiaohan snorted coldly as he quickly summoned his sword back into his hand. His eyes were fixed on the flying swords that were flying towards him as he shouted, "Daluo sky-shattering style." Gripping the hilt of the flying sword with both hands, he immediately transformed it into an illusory giant sword. Raising it high in the air, he fiercely slashed it down. With a loud bang, the cone formed by the 98 flying swords was immediately scattered, one after another falling from the sky to the ground. Yu Qianqiu staggered on the flying sword. He pressed his hand against his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. The 98 flying swords, which were connected to his mind, sent back a powerful tremor at the same time, injuring him on the spot. Luo Xiaohan looked at the 90-odd flying swords on the ground and exclaimed softly, "They're all superior-grade flying swords." According to his own estimation, with such a huge difference in their cultivation bases, his attack should have shattered at least a dozen of his opponent's flying swords, even if not all of them had been shattered. Who knew that none of them had been shattered? So they were all superior-grade flying swords. Once bitten, twice shy. Yu Qianqiu finally understood that with his cultivation base, it was impossible for him to fight his opponent head-on. With a pinch of his fingers, the flying swords on the ground immediately flew back to him and circled around him a few times. His 10 fingers pinched together like a lotus, and the 98 flying swords scattered in different trajectories and quickly swarmed towards him. "You really won't shed a tear until you see your own coffin." Luo Xiaohan snorted coldly as he let go of the flying sword in his hand and let it hover in the air in front of his chest. He quickly made a complicated pinch of his fingers and pointed at the tail of the sword. He hurriedly shouted, "Daluo sky-shattering style." The body of the sword trembled and rotated rapidly, transforming into countless sword shadows. He pushed them out with one palm. The number of sword shadows increased, and in the blink of an eye, they formed a sword shield in front of him. It immediately entangled all of the flying swords that Yu Qianqiu had released. After a series of ear-piercing crisp sounds, Yu Qianqiu was forced to give up controlling the 98 flying swords. If he continued to resist, he would definitely be injured again. Seeing that Yu Qianqiu had given up resisting, Luo Xiaohan laughed heartily. With another pinch of his fingers, the spinning range of the sword's shadows shrank. He bounced Yu Qianqiu's flying swords back one by one and kept them into his storage bag. The onlookers felt that it was a pity. Even Qiu Weiyuan and the others who supported Yu Qianqiu from the devil path could not help but sigh. At this moment, Yan Zixia finally revealed a trace of worry in her eyes as she witnessed the situation. The people from supporting Immortal Island, on the other hand, had indescribable expressions on their faces. Although Yu Qianqiu had been expelled from supporting Immortal Island, he was still an outstanding disciple of supporting Immortal Island. His loss had brought shame to supporting Immortal Island. The 4 shopkeepers of the shops from the 4 major clans had received orders before they came. If Yu Qianqiu was defeated and in danger, they were to rescue him at all costs. At this moment, the 4 of them were already ready to make a move. Yan Zhuixing sized up the 2 people who were fighting and felt that something was wrong. It seemed like it shouldn't have ended like this. Because Yu Qianqiu was too calm, it seemed like he did not care about this defeat at all. Did he think that Luo Xiaohan would let him go just like that? Luo Xiaohan stared at the flying sword under Yu Qianqiu's feet. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he teased, "Yu Qianqiu, thank you for the high-grade magic tool you gave me. If you still have it, I might let you go if I'm happy." A burst of laughter came from the Daluo sect's side. Yu Qianqiu stood on the flying sword with his hands behind his back. He squinted his eyes and stared at Luo Xiaohan. He said arrogantly, "You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I, Yu Qianqiu, have never been defeated since my debut. How can I be defeated by a bastard like you?" That was just a warm-up. Now, I'll show you how powerful my Xian Qi is. I hope you won't regret it. Today, he was not as low-key as he usually was. Instead, he talked a lot of big words. Only he knew why. Hearing this, Luo Xiaohan laughed again. He said, "All right, bring it on. I want to see how powerful your Xian Qi is." He stopped abruptly before he could finish his sentence. He was dumbfounded. A demonic red light lit up in the sky, and a sea of fire suddenly appeared in the sky. In the middle of it, there was a person looking at him indifferently, as if he was looking at an ant. Who else could it be other than Yu Qianqiu? What was going on? The spectators were shocked. Even those who were standing far away could feel the scorching heat. The flowers and trees around the sea of fire were already emitting wisps of green smoke. The sea of fire had already started burning and was slowly spreading to the surroundings. The shock brought to everyone was indescribable. Qiu Weiyuan swallowed hard and murmured, "What kind of spell is this? Why haven't I heard of it before? Could this be the Xian Qi that Yu Qianqiu mentioned? Senior brother, have you heard of it?" The person he asked was precisely the Flower Palace's Yan Bugui. The latter recovered from his shock and exhaled before he said, "Amazing, I'm able to feel such a high temperature while standing here. How could Yu Qianqiu who's within the flames endure it?" Yan Zhuixing nodded to himself. That's right. He really had something to rely on. No wonder he was so arrogant. Among the crowd, little Hong Qi's eyes shone brightly, and his two little hands couldn't help but grab onto his maternal grandparents' clothes. Dong Guisu and his wife looked at each other, and they couldn't conceal the shock in their eyes. In fact, it was not only the two of them. The others were the same. After the Luo sect's Zhu Xianxian regained his senses, he winked at the disciples around him, warning them to get ready. Seeing that the disciples were a little timid and did not move for a long time, he could not help but feel annoyed. He took a step forward and wanted to take action himself. Unexpectedly, he heard Qiu Weiyuan's laughter. "Zhu Xianxian, let's set the rules before the duel. If any of Luo Xiaohan's masters make a move, don't blame me, Qiu Weiyuan, for being impolite." Under the crowd's gaze, Qiu Weiyuan laughed heartily. He was going to do Luo Xiaohan a favor today. Yu Qianqiu glanced over and quickly retracted the flames around him, compressing them to an arm's length away from him. He stared at the dumbfounded Luo Xiaohan and said coldly, "Didn't you want to see how powerful my Xian Qi is? Why aren't you making a move?" Chapter 250. On the other side, Yu Qianqiu was clad in flames, standing in the air like a god of fire. Luo Xiaohan's heart palpitated. He was now in a dilemma. If he fled now, he would lose all face for the Luo sect. He was the legitimate son of the sect master. Others could flee, but he could not. However, he was too timid to do so. People were always afraid of the unknown. "If you're not going to make a move, then I will," Yu Qianqiu said again. Luo Xiaohan turned to look at Zhu Xianxian, pleading for help. Then, he gritted his teeth and said, "It's just a smokescreen. Don't use it to scare people." As he spoke, the sword in his hand shot out, looking like he was taking the opportunity to launch a sneak attack. Yu Qianqiu was expressionless. He raised his hand and pointed two fingers. A thin red line of fire shot out to meet the flying sword. Now that he had his own understanding of fire control, he realized that the more compressed a flame was, the more powerful it would be. Poof! The red line of fire collided with the flying sword. There was no loud sound as it was split apart by the sword's edge. However, with a buzz, the broken line of fire turned into a ball of fire that immediately engulfed the flying sword and burned it. The flying sword advanced a few meters when it collided with the line of fire. Then, the enchanting flames melted the sword into a ball of liquid and fell to the ground. Luo Xiaohan's face paled. The spectators around him gasped. What a powerful flame! It almost melted the flying sword in an instant. Humph! Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly. After withdrawing the line of fire, he suddenly rode his sword towards Luo Xiaohan. He did not want to waste any more time with his opponent. In the eyes of the spectators, it was as if a ball of fire was rushing towards Luo Xiaohan. Without a sword in hand, Luo Xiaohan immediately fumbled for the flying sword he had just obtained. He suddenly realized that there was still a strand of Yu Qianqiu's divine sense in the sword. If he wanted to control it, he would have to spend some time to erase it. However, he did not have the time to do so in his current situation. His instinctive reaction was to turn tail and run. But with his nascent soul cultivation, how fast could he go without flying on his sword? When he turned around to take a look, the burning man, Yu Qianqiu, was already closing in on him. He was scared out of his wits. As he desperately flew forward, he shouted, "Uncle Master, save me!" His intestines were about to turn green with regret, but he couldn't regret what he had done. It should be known that most of the cultivators in the cultivation world relied on flying swords and other magic artifacts and magic treasures to fight. Without these things, not many people could do anything in a fight. After all, it was not realistic to fight a flying sword with bare hands. Since Zhu Xianxian was being watched by Qiu Weiyuan, it was not convenient for him to make a move. He glared at the 6 disciples beside him and harumphed angrily, which was more or less a threat. The 6 of them were also original infant stage disciples. They were supposed to accompany Luo Xiaohan out to play. Although they said they were out to play, they were actually here to protect him. At this moment, they did not dare to hesitate any longer. The consequences were not something they could bear. After exchanging glances, the 6 of them quickly flew away on their swords. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the 6 of them and smiled ferociously. Instantly, his killing intent surged. He had purposely chased after Luo Xiaohan, waiting for the others to make a move. Now was the time to kill, and also the beginning of his fight with the Luo sect to the death. The speed of the flying sword suddenly increased by a few notches. His 5 fingers formed a claw that was covered with a thin layer of dazzling red flames. It directly pierced through Luo Xiaohan's back like a knife cutting through tofu. There was not the slightest bit of strain in his movements. How could the flaming claws, which had been suppressed to the extreme by Yu Qianqiu, be blocked by a mere human body? Naturally, it was effortless. Luo Xiaohan did not even have the chance to scream. He felt his body stop moving, as if he was hanging on something. Looking down, he saw a flaming claw protruding from his chest, holding a heart, as if it was placed in front of him for him to see. Then, his vision blurred, and he lost consciousness. In the midst of Zhu Xianqian's angry roar, Luo Xiaohan turned into ashes, which were blown away by the wind. A storage pouch was caught by Yu Qianqiu, who threw it into his own. Countless people's faces changed. What a powerful fire spell! Everyone was shocked. This Yu Qianqiu really dared to kill. Wasn't he making an enemy out of the Luo sect? Did he really think that he could fight against the Luo sect alone? He was simply courting death. However, the demonic cultivators, starting from Qiu Weiyuan, applauded and cheered. It was impossible for Yu Qianqiu to stay in the righteous section since a lone cultivator was also weak, so if he wanted to live in peace, he would have to join the demonic sections. How could the demonic cultivators not be happy when they thought about how they would have such a person? Yu Qianqiu, who could control the intensity of the fire with ease and suppress the temperature of the fire, pretended to hold up Luo Xiaohan's bloody heart in front of Zhu Xianxian. Under Zhu Xianxian's furious gaze, the heart was annihilated with the wind. At that moment, 6 flying swords were already flying towards them. Yu Qianqiu faced the sky and let out a long roar. He spread his arms, and his entire body became like the mouth of a spring. Endless raging flames rushed out from his body, surging in all directions like the sea. The flames were monstrous and engulfed the 6 flying swords in an instant. The 6 cultivators immediately felt that they had lost contact with their flying swords. There was no time to think. Running for their lives was more important. The sea of fire was already rushing towards them. However, the speed of the 6 people who had lost their flying swords could not keep up with the speed of the sea of fire. In the blink of an eye, the sea of fire engulfed the 6 people who were scared out of their wits, leaving behind 6 incomparably painful screams that spread in the wilderness. The surrounding people were immediately startled by the surging flames. Could it be that this madman wanted to kill everyone at the same time? Just as everyone was about to escape, the sea of fire quickly retracted. Even the flames on the surrounding vegetation were retracted. When the monstrous flames were retracted back into Yu Qianqiu's body, not a single spark could be seen on the ground. Following that, the flames were retracted. It was a miraculous sight. As for the 6 cultivators who had been swallowed by the sea of fire, there was no longer any trace of them. It was obvious that they had been reduced to ashes. With the crisis averted, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. However, they could not imagine that such a huge and unparalleled flame could be hidden in a person's body. It was simply unimaginable. They were all shocked by the scene just now. A core formation cultivator killed 7 nascent soul cultivators just like that. Brother Yu, you're amazing. Qiu Weiyuan gave a thumbs up to Yu Qianqiu, who was still standing in a ball of fire in the air. The people from Devil Dao cheered wildly. However, the people from the Righteous Dao felt it was a pity. They all looked towards Fu Xian Island. Why did they expel such a powerful disciple from the sect? Actually, how could Quan Deming feel good in his heart? But what could he say? He could only sigh in his heart. He was originally an outstanding disciple that the sect was prepared to nurture. If it wasn't for Ong Guangceng. Sigh. Actually, this disciple didn't do anything wrong to Fu Xian Island. If they knew that Ong Guangceng's sect would be exterminated, the 4 shopkeepers of the shops of the 4 major clans didn't understand why the 4 clan heads valued Yu Qianqiu so much. But now, it seemed that the 4 clan heads already knew about it. The 4 of them couldn't help but look at each other. Yan Zixia looked at Yu Qianqiu with a complicated expression. However, her father and brother's eyes flashed with a strange light as if they saw a treasure. Yu Qianqiu stared coldly at Zhu Xianxian and said emotionlessly, "Elder Zhu, is this duel fair? If you think it's unfair, why don't you teach me a few moves? I'm willing to learn from you." His tone was calm, but it carried a domineering aura of contempt. He was clearly challenging Zhu Xianxian. Everyone was shocked. A core formation stage cultivator wanted to challenge an elder of the Luo sect, who was in the early stage of tribulation passing. Wasn't he too arrogant? But then they thought about it. Who knew what other secrets this fire spell had? Who knew if there was a more powerful killer move? Otherwise, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't be so arrogant. Brother Yu, you're so brave. I can feast my eyes on you again. Ha! Qiu Weiyuan gave a thumbs up and laughed. He turned his head and shouted, "Zhu Xianxian, don't let me down." The people of Diabolism immediately followed suit. Everyone's eyes were focused on Zhu Xianxian. Hearing this, Zhu Xianxian's expression changed. After a long time, he said in a low voice, "Do you think I'm a member of your Diabolism? I won't bully the weak." After saying this, he turned around and left, floating toward the entrance of the 100 Flowers Valley. The people of Diabolism immediately booed. Some people cursed him for being hypocritical and shameless. Hearing the curses behind him, Zhu Xianxian looked calm on the surface, but his heart was bleeding. The Luo sect had lost a lot of face today, but he didn't have the slightest confidence that he could defeat Yu Qianqiu. Anyone who saw the monstrous flames just now would be terrified. Gambling with his life was not worth it. The Luo sect is only a so-so. Yu Qianqiu's words drifted over, almost causing him to vomit blood. He resisted the urge to turn back and quickly entered the 100 Flowers Valley. In fact, Zhu Xianxian didn't know that Yu Qianqiu secretly heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Zhu Xianxian had really left. That raging flame technique had consumed most of the fire element stored in his body. Without the support of the fire element, it was impossible for Yu Qianqiu to use the powerful fire art. If Zhu Xianxian turned back now, Yu Qianqiu could only escape. Unfortunately, the monstrous flames just now had already shocked the former. Yu Qianqiu looked around, and the raging flames outside his body were all retracted back into his body. His gaze landed on the child standing between Dong Guosu and his wife, and he directly flew over on his sword. After landing, he sheathed his sword. He stared at Hong Qi and said with a faint smile, "Do you still recognize me?" Chapter 251. Lil Hong Qi's lips twitched. He was obviously a little excited. His master's technique just now was simply too spectacular. His eyes sparkled, and he looked back at his grandfather as if he wanted to say something. In the past, his grandfather had warned him more than once not to let others know that he had a master. Now that his master had come to him, he didn't know how to answer. When Hong Qi first became his disciple, because Yu Qianqiu was still a disciple of Fuxian Island, Dong Guosu was quite satisfied. Later on, Yu Qianqiu became the public enemy of the Cultivation Alliance, which made Dong Guosu's heart jump. He was afraid that he would be implicated, so he often warned his grandson not to tell others about his master. Now that Yu Qianqiu had made a strong appearance and publicly found them in front of everyone, it was obvious that he wanted to expose this hidden disciple. He had seen everything that happened at the scene. Yu Qianqiu's connections and strength were enough to protect his grandson. If he could learn that powerful fire technique, it would be beneficial for him for life. How could Dong Guosu have any objections? He immediately smiled and nodded at his grandson. Lil Hong Qi's face lit up. He knelt on the ground with a plop and kowtowed. Disciple Hong Qi greets master. I thought you were angry at master for not looking for you for a long time. Yu Qianqiu helped him up and smiled faintly. He rubbed Lil Hong Qi's head and sized him up. He frowned and said, "Only level 5 Qi refinement, a little slow. You have to work hard. When you reach the foundation building stage, master will pass the Starflame fire technique to you." Starflame fire technique. Lil Hong Qi widened his eyes and asked, "Is that the technique master used just now?" Yu Qianqiu opened his palm, and a ball of flame ignited in his palm. It instantly condensed into a bright red firebird that fluttered in his palm. Of course, he had already restrained the temperature, or else little Hong Qi would not be able to withstand it. Yu Qianqiu smiled. Yes, this is the Starflame fire technique that master created. If you want to cultivate it, you have to work hard to improve your cultivation. Hong Qi looked at the cheerful firebird, and his eyes lit up. He nodded. Master, I will definitely work hard to improve my cultivation. Hearing this, everyone was shocked. They didn't know if what Yu Qianqiu said was true or false. Such a heaven-defying technique was actually created by him. That was an incredible talent. The people of Supporting Immortal Island, especially Quan Deming, already knew that Yu Qianqiu was talented. When he was on Supporting Immortal Island, he had created his own alchemy technique. Later on, he even modified the Guiyuan sword technique to cultivate. They didn't expect that he could also create such a powerful fire technique. In other words, it was a great loss for Supporting Immortal Island to expel Ong Guangceng from the sect. Although everyone was shocked, they still envied the young Hongqi the most. With a master like this, his future was bound to be boundless. Dongguosu and his wife looked at each other, and they were pleasantly surprised. They were surprised because they didn't know if Yu Qianqiu would be able to avoid the revenge of the exalted sect, and they were delighted because so long as Yu Qianqiu was able to deal with the exalted sect, then their grandson's future would be bright. This was truly a bet that was difficult to choose. This kind of mentality was probably a common problem of parents. Haha. Brother Yu, since when did you accept a disciple? Qiu Wuyuan laughed heartily. Behind him were the siblings Yan Bugue and Yan Zixia, as well as a group of ambitious and ruthless people. Yu Qianqiu retracted the firebird in his palm. He glanced at the people of Supporting Immortal Island and said with a smile, I accepted him previously. I wanted to bring him back to Supporting Immortal Island, but who knew that even I would be expelled from Supporting Immortal Island? Coincidentally, the fire art I comprehended was at a critical juncture. I didn't have time to care about him, so I let him cultivate on his own at such a young age. These words almost made Quan Deming and the others vomit blood. It turned out that this guy was already comprehending this overbearing fire art when he was expelled from the sect. If he wasn't expelled from the sect, wouldn't Supporting Immortal Island have another peerless art? The people of Supporting Immortal Island were depressed. The people from other sects also looked at them as if they were looking at fools. Qiu Wuyuan also glanced at the people of Supporting Immortal Island when he heard this. He rejoiced inwardly. Fortunately, that group of idiots had expelled Yu Qianqiu from the sect. Otherwise, if Supporting Immortal Island had such a tyrannical technique, wouldn't the demonic path be suppressed? However, Qiu Wuyuan was in a good mood today. The Luo sect had suffered a loss, Supporting Immortal Island had lost face, and even the entire righteous path had lost face. He couldn't help but laugh. Brother Yu, you don't need to lower yourself to those people's level. If you are interested, my 10,000 demons will welcome you with open doors. As long as you are willing to join my 10,000 demons, I guarantee that you won't have to suffer from those cowards. Hearing this, the people of the evil path's eyes brightened. They all sent out warm invitations. My blood demon palace warmly welcomes you. The corpse sect awaits your arrival. The invitations of the evil path sects immediately changed the faces of the righteous path sections. I appreciate everyone's good intentions. However, after experiencing 2 sects, I have suffered a lot of cowardice. From now on, I don't want to join any sects of the righteous path or the evil path. I just want to be independent. Yu Qianqiu clasped his hands at everyone and asked Hongqi, Hongqi, are you willing to accompany Master to travel around the world? Yes. Hongqi nodded. He didn't know what was good or bad. He just agreed based on his intuition. Yu Qianqiu smiled satisfactorily. In fact, there was no need to travel around the world with him. It was just to deal with people's rejection. He then said to Dongguosu and his wife, today, I will take Hongqi with me. Are you two willing? The two looked at each other. Although they were reluctant, they still bowed together and said, thank you, sir. Seeing that he didn't want to join the evil path, the people of the evil path were a little disappointed. However, they didn't force him. The righteous path also felt a little comfortable. Brother Yu. Seeing that they were almost done talking, Yan Zhuixing interrupted and pointed to the old man beside him and introduced, this is my father. Yu Qianqiu sized up the old man in front of him with a serious expression. Sure enough, he had the air of a formidable character. He immediately bowed and said, I've long heard of Senior Yan's great name. It is my honor to be able to meet you today. Ha! Yu Qianqiu, you are friends with my junior brother and Xing. There is no need to be so polite. Yan Bugue waved his hand and said with a smile, my 100-flower palace doesn't belong to the righteous path or the evil path. We have always been neutral. Since you are not interested in the righteous path or the evil path, why don't you come to my 100-flower palace? Although my 100-flower palace isn't a big sect, it can more or less avoid some trouble. Yu Qianqiu, are you interested? Hearing that, Yan Zixia's eyes flickered indeterminately. On the other hand, Dong Guisu and his wife were looking forward to it. If Yu Qianqiu joined the 100-flower palace, then they wouldn't have to be separated from their grandson. The other sects were stunned. Could it be that the 100-flower palace will take advantage of him in the end? But that's good. It's a good thing as long as this person doesn't fall into the hands of the evil path. Yu Qianqiu's heart skipped a beat. He rubbed his nose and didn't answer for a long time. His face was full of smiles as his gaze swept back and forth between the Yan father and son. When his gaze fell into their eyes, he instantly felt as if all his secrets were seen through. Yan Bugue coughed lightly and broke the awkwardness. There is no hurry to answer. Why don't you stay in the 100 Flowers Valley and think about it slowly? Ha! Yu Qianqiu chuckled lightly and shook his head. The 100-flower palace is neither righteous nor evil, so it's a good place to go. Unfortunately, Senior Yan and Brother Yan are both people who do great things. I've said that I only want to be independent, so I truly don't dare to get involved in your matters. The others didn't think much of it and thought that it was just Yu Qianqiu's excuse. However, Quan Deming from Fuxian all suddenly stared at the father and son pair. Yan Bugue and Yan Zhuixing's expressions changed, and the latter's gaze burned with anticipation. Brother Yu, what do you mean? Why don't I understand? Brother Yan, do you really want me to make it clear in front of all the sects? That isn't good, right? Yu Qianqiu replied with a question, and then he shook his head and sighed. What if I make it difficult for your 100-flower palace? Wouldn't it hurt the friendship between us? His words had already put the 100-flower palace in a difficult position. If he didn't say it, all the sects would definitely think that the 100-flower palace was hiding something, and they couldn't help but associate it with the 100-flower palace. Say it. If he really knew something, then it was something that couldn't be exposed. Yu Qianqiu, just say what you want to say. Don't make everyone suspicious. Yan Bugue frowned. But you better not speak nonsense. My 100-flower palace isn't that easy to mess with. As expected, the older the wiser. His words not only smoothed things over, but also contained a half-threat. Everyone was puzzled, and only Quan Deming's face was gloomy. Yu Qianqiu raised his brows, and he snorted. Senior Yan, I can distinguish the severity of some things, and I know what to say and what not to say. But I hate it when people threaten me the most. There was a hint of coldness in his words. Yu Qianqiu turned his gaze to Quan Deming, and he shook his head and sighed. Elder Quan, I've always thought that Fu Xian Island was really the strongest sect in the cultivation world. But some time ago, I accidentally learned some things, and then I realized that there's always someone better than you. Some hidden forces are the real number one in the world. Sigh. Looks like the cultivation world is going to be chaotic soon. Someone wants to unify the righteous and demonic sects, and become the first person in history. Ong Guangzheng is a good example. I don't want to get involved in these things, so it's better for me to stay away from them, so that I won't be affected. Chapter 252. It was easy to imagine the commotion caused by his words. As long as one wasn't an idiot, they would be able to understand what he meant. According to what he said, there was a hidden force in the cultivation world that was even more powerful than supporting Xian Island. This force wanted to unify the entire cultivation world. Ong Guangzheng was killed by it, and this force was secretly controlled by Baihua Palace. Everyone had different expressions. They were both doubtful and in disbelief. Actually, if these words were said during normal times, the father and son of the Yan clan wouldn't have taken it to heart. They would just push the blame onto others and push the blame onto others. Who could do anything to them if there was no evidence? Unfortunately, the supporting Immortal Island had suddenly barged in and fought with them. Others might not know what Yu Qianqiu was talking about, but the supporting Immortal Island had suffered a loss, so how could they not know? The worst thing was that even if they were stronger than the supporting Immortal Island, the key to determining their strength was the number of experts at the final stage of the Crossing Tribulation stage. They only had 4 experts, while the supporting Immortal Island had at least 20 experts. These 20 experts were the key to establishing the supporting Immortal Island as the #1 expert in the world. It didn't matter if Yu Qianqiu knew about it or not. But one thing was for sure. This guy pretended to be innocent, but he was actually looking for trouble on purpose. Otherwise, he wouldn't have exaggerated the matter. Yan Bugui was furious. Yu Qianqiu, you are obviously slandering Baihua Palace. What are your intentions? Humph. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly. I don't have any intentions, and I didn't mention your Baihua Palace by name. I don't think Baihua Palace's lord knows about this. He later asked Xue Qin Kong about some details. He guessed that it was done secretly by the Yan father and son, and Baihua Fairy didn't know about it. Baihua Palace controlled a group of powerful forces, but Baihua Palace's lord didn't know about it. This was a bit strange. 10,000 demons. Qiu Weiyuan's eyelids twitched. He looked at Yan Bugui suspiciously. Could this be a trap set up by the sect that even I don't know about? He couldn't help but think of the oath he made when An Kuangsung's clan was destroyed. If it was really related to 10,000 demons, wouldn't he die a horrible death? Supporting Immortal Island's Quan Deming's eyes flickered. He also suspected that this was the Palace of Myriad Demons plot. If what Yu Qianqiu said was true, how could Baihua Fairy, as the Palace Lord of Baihua Palace, not know about it? Wasn't this clearly showing that the one surnamed Yan was guarding against supporting Immortal Island, or rather, targeting supporting Immortal Island? Yan Zixia bit her lips. First of all, because of her relationship with Yu Qianqiu, she more or less believed what he said. Second of all, she had been in Baihua Palace for so many years. She had noticed that her father and brother had done something behind her mother's back, so it was possible. In short, the more Yu Qianqiu didn't explain it clearly, the more suspicious everyone would be. Yan Zhuixing roared almost crazily, Yu Qianqiu, are you crazy? When did Baihua Palace offend you? Why are you trying to frame Baihua Palace? He knew what the consequences would be if this was confirmed. Not to mention the attacks from all the sects. If his mother found out that he and his father had done such a thing behind her back, the family would probably fall apart. Yu Qianqiu secretly sneered. Damn it. Everyone is hiding in the dark, relying on their own abilities to make a living. You could have pretended to be anyone, but you had to pretend to be my hero. If I don't teach you a lesson, who else should I teach? Now you know the pain of being framed. Not to mention, I'm not just framing you. Brother Yan, who are you saying is crazy? Do you really want me to shed all pretense of cordiality and spill everything? Yu Qianqiu's tone was cold. He wanted to seize the opportunity to ignite the fire, wishing for the whole world to be in chaos. Actually, he didn't realize that ever since he gained some strength, he was much more daring in doing things. Yan Bugui was indeed a wily old fox. He had already figured out what was going on. This Yu Qianqiu really did know a lot of things, and he was deliberately trying to find fault with him. If he picked up the topic, he would not let it go. Right now, the best thing to do was not to argue with him. The more he argued, the more he would be at a disadvantage. If there was anything, they could talk about it later. It was not the time to settle things in front of all the sections. He immediately blocked his son, who was about to go crazy, and said coldly, "There will be a day when the right and wrong will be clear. Why are you arguing so much now? Let's go." Stop. Yu Qianqiu shouted. He wouldn't let the Yen father and son go so easily. Since he had already dragged them off the boat, the enmity between them was already set in stone. How could he not use the pole of the boat to stab them a few more times? It would be best if he could drown the enemy. What else do you want? Yen Bugui turned around and asked. He was suppressing the anger in his chest and came out to watch the show. He didn't expect that his clothes would be stripped off, and now he was the focus of the crowd. How could he say anything? If there weren't so many people present, he would have killed Yu Qianqiu long ago. Yu Qianqiu laughed coldly. There are some things I don't want to say, but since someone called me crazy, then I have to make it clear. As for whether I'm crazy or not, let everyone judge after I'm done. Everyone stared at Yu Qianqiu, obviously waiting for him to finish. Yen Bugui's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know what else he would say. He shouted angrily, "Who wants to listen to your nonsense? Get lost. My 100 Flowers Valley doesn't welcome you." Wait. Quan Deming walked over, a smile on his face as he said, "Brother Yen, there's no need to get angry. We're all bored anyway, so there's no harm in listening. I don't believe his words anyway. I just want to hear what he has to say." That's right, there's no harm in listening. Many people followed. If Yen Bugui continued to hide, it would be obvious that he was guilty. He snorted coldly and stopped talking. His mind was racing, thinking of a way to deal with it. Yu Qianqiu didn't care so much. He walked leisurely and said slowly, "Actually, after I was expelled from Fuxian Island, I didn't go anywhere else. I just cultivated in a mountain not far away from the 100 Flowers Valley. One day, when I was cultivating in a hidden place in the valley, a cave suddenly appeared on the opposite mountain wall. I saw hundreds of masked men in black coming out from it. There was also a young palace master with them. Because I knew that young palace master, although I was a little suspicious of their mysterious actions, I didn't do anything. After all, I wasn't in a good situation at that time." Everyone's eyes immediately focused on Yan Zhuixing. Yan Zhuixing was so angry that he trembled. However, Yu Qianqiu didn't mention his name. If he jumped out now, it would be no different from giving himself away. Quan Deming's face was gloomy. He asked, "What happened after that?" Yu Qianqiu paused and continued, "But the next day, I heard the news that Guangcang was attacked by hundreds of men in black. I was suspicious at that time, so I hid in the valley to observe. I even wanted to run into the cave to find out what was going on. Who knew that I was blocked by some strange formation? I really couldn't go in, so I hid and continued to observe. Sure enough, a few days later, hundreds of people came out from the cave. However, they were all dressed in white, and the number was less than the men in black. After they came out of the cave, they secretly hurried to the east. Although their cultivation was very high, they obviously didn't dare to be too ostentatious. So I followed them. None of you would believe what I saw later." Everyone was listening attentively. He stopped again. As a result, even Qiu Wuyuan couldn't help but ask, "Brother Yu, what did you see? There's no harm in telling us." Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, "These people actually went out of the sea. I secretly followed them all the way to an island. There were cultivators everywhere on the island, and I estimated that there were more than 10,000 of them. What surprised me the most was that even though I was in the middle stage of the core formation realm, I didn't see anyone with a cultivation level lower than mine. Moreover, I occasionally saw people who could use teleportation. It was clear that they had reached the late stage of the transcending tribulation. Fortunately, my body was different from ordinary people, so it was hard to be discovered. Otherwise, with their cultivation, I would have been discovered long ago, and I wouldn't have been able to return. At that time, I hid in a rock and happened to hear two people talking. It turned out that there really were more than 10,000 people on the island. The earliest people had been here for nearly 150 years. They were all kidnapped by someone using the natal primordial spirit stripping technique. Among them, there were individual cultivators and disciples from various sects in the cultivation world. I was secretly surprised, but who knew that I would hear a shocking secret later, which scared me even more. Chapter 253. Wasn't the natal primordial spirit stripping technique lost a long time ago? Qiu Wuyuan's face darkened. This technique was a nightmare for cultivators, regardless of whether they were righteous or evil. Once they were controlled, they wouldn't be able to resist at all and would be at the mercy of others. Everyone's face changed. They didn't expect such a thing to appear. The father and son of the Yen family didn't look good either. They didn't know if it was because of Yu Qianzhou's nonsense or because his secret was exposed. Quan Deming glanced at him. He was more concerned about what would happen next. He asked in a deep voice, "Yu Qianzhou, what's the secret?" Yu Qianzhou looked in a certain direction and smiled bitterly with lingering fear. "To be honest, I'm afraid that after I say it, someone will kill me today. I'm not afraid of ordinary people, but the hidden strength of that person is too strong. If he sends 2 experts at the final stage of passing tribulation, I'm afraid I won't be able to keep my life." "Go ahead and say it. I'll make it clear today. I don't care about other places, but here, anyone who wants your life will have to go through my supporting immortal island first. Unless everyone in my supporting immortal island dies, no one will be able to touch a single hair of yours. Don't worry and speak boldly." After Quan Deming finished speaking, a few disciples of supporting Xian Island immediately guarded around Yu Qianzhou. They looked around like tigers watching their prey. "Hey! I'm relieved with Elder Quan's words." Yu Qianzhou sighed and continued. "Those 2 said that they attacked the spirit stone mines of Daluo sect and on Guangcang to test their coordination. After killing on Guangcang, the master felt that it was enough and made a plan to unify the cultivation world. He wanted to create some trouble between supporting Xian Island and the 10,000 demons. It would be best if the 2 sects fought each other. As long as the 2 sects were in chaos, the righteous and evil sects would be in chaos. When the strength of the cultivation world was almost exhausted, we could seize the opportunity and use the natal primordial spirit stripping technique to firmly control the cultivation world. After listening to them, I jumped in fright. I didn't dare to stay there any longer. After the 2 people who were talking left, I sneaked back into the room. But I have a bad habit. I can't control my curiosity. Later, I couldn't help but sneak into the valley and witness a great battle. At this point, Quan Deming had already guessed what he was going to say. His face was gloomy and he didn't say anything. Qiu Wuyuan couldn't help but ask, "Don't stop, brother Yu. Who fought who? Tell me." Yu Qianzhou nodded with a wry smile. "One day, I was hiding there when I saw Elder Dongfang of supporting Xian Island leading 50 crossing tribulation elders to the valley. I thought it was strange. What were the people of supporting Xian Island doing here? Who knew that they would spend some effort to break the formation protecting the cave? After they entered, I heard the sounds of a fierce battle. I didn't know what was going on inside, but if you want to know, you should ask Elder Dongfang. When I was outside, I saw another scene. There was another entrance to the cave. While they were fighting inside, another entrance covered by a formation appeared on the other side. The young palace lord was quickly escorted away by 2 people. It seems like the people from Fuxian Island suffered some losses in the cave. More than 50 elders went in, but only a dozen came out. It was Elder Dongfang who held a golden spear and fought desperately to protect the others from escaping. Elder Dongfang then retreated while fighting and flew towards 100 Flower Valley. This happened a few days ago. I don't know what happened after that. Dongfang Chang Ao. Golden Origin Spear. Supporting Xian Island lost dozens of crossing tribulation elders? Damn. Why haven't I heard of this before? Chiu Wuyuan scratched his head and turned to ask, Quan Deming, brother, you doesn't look like a liar. Don't tell me you don't know what happened in supporting Xian Island. Is this true or not? Quan Deming looked at the father and son of the Yen family and sneered. Yes, it's true. Yu Qianqiu didn't say a word. My supporting Xian Island was wondering who sent so many experts to kill more than 30 crossing tribulation stage elders of my supporting Xian Island. It turns out that someone has been plotting for more than 100 years to unify the cultivation world. Chiu Wuyuan, the eyes of your myriad demons palace are growing on your buttocks. You almost got tricked by your own people without even realizing it. Previously, he was worried that the 10,000 demons were behind this. But after hearing what Yu Qianqiu said, it turned out that someone didn't want to let the 10,000 demons go. Chiu Wuyuan was stunned by his words. Unless Yu Qianqiu was talking nonsense, but part of the process had been confirmed by Quan Deming, so it shouldn't be fake. He looked at his senior brother and didn't know what to say. The surrounding people were in an uproar and disgust. They didn't expect someone to set up such a big conspiracy. But supporting Xian Island and the 10,000 demons were behind the 100 Flowers Palace. It wasn't up to the other sects to decide how to deal with it. Yu Qianqiu, on the other hand, looked much more relaxed now that he had said what was on his mind. The Yen family's father and son looked gloomy. Only the two of them knew that Yu Qianqiu was obviously tricking them. Putting aside the other flaws, how could they not know whether they were the ones who robbed Daluo sect and Nongquangsung's spirit stone mine? If this wasn't framing them, then what was? But this guy actually knew a lot of things, especially about the battle between Dongfang Chang Ao and the people in the valley. Supporting Xian Island was the first to believe it. Yen Bugue looked around and said in a deep voice, "Why are you all looking at us? Even if what Yu Qianqiu said is true, did he say that we were the ones who did it?" Everyone was stunned. They didn't expect Yen Bugue to deny it even now. Chiu Wuyuan didn't expect his senior brother to be so shameless. Quan Deming sneered, "Yu Qianqiu, since you've said it like this, why don't you just tell us who the mastermind is?" Yu Qianqiu, don't go overboard with your nonsense. Yen Bugue's tone and expression were clearly threatening the witness. Just say what you want. No one will dare to do anything to you. Quan Deming said in disdain. Yu Qianqiu's gaze paused on Yen Zixia. After a long time, he shook his head and sighed, "I've forgotten who the mastermind is." Everyone was stunned. Yen Bugue laughed and said, "I already said this has nothing to do with us, but you don't believe me. Humph. Let's go." The members of the Flower Palace flashed through the sky with swagger. Only Yen Zixia glanced deeply at Yu Qianqiu before she left. She probably thought that Yu Qianqiu had intentionally let them all for her sake. Everyone didn't know what Yu Qianqiu was up to. It wouldn't make sense if he said he was afraid of Yen Bugue. As long as he testified, they wouldn't let him go. Letting him go would be the most dangerous thing. Yu Qianqiu sneered to himself. What good does it do me if you catch him? I've forced him into a dead end and left him a way out. As long as he's not an idiot, he'll run away the moment he returns to White Flower Valley. By then, the tens of thousands of people in his hands will be of great use. It should be enough to stir up chaos in the cultivation world. Chaos is good. I like it. Why didn't you say it? Quan Deming frowned. Are you afraid that Fuxian Island can't protect you? He had already prepared an excuse for this. He shook his head and sneered, "Protect me? Even if that's the case, Fuxian Island has already abandoned me once when I was in danger and needed protection the most. How can I trust them?" Chiao Wuyuan looked him up and down and asked doubtfully, "Are you that afraid of death? From what I know, you've always been bold. Times have changed. I thought I had a good master who could protect me. Now, I have to rely on myself. How can I not be careful? I still want to live for 2 more years." Yu Qianqiu mocked himself. He took out a jade archive and handed it to Quan Deming, saying, "This is the route I memorized when I went to that island the last time. If you want to go there, you must be careful. That island is truly filled with experts. It's not a lie. If Senior Chiao is interested, you can make a copy and take a look." "Alright, this is all I can do." "Wait." Quan Deming had a question that he wanted to clarify. This matter was very important to Fuxian Island, so he stopped him and asked, "You just said that Baihua Palace Lord probably doesn't know about this. What makes you so sure that Baihua Fairy doesn't know about this?" Not to mention him, even Chiao Wuyuan wanted to clarify this matter. Chapter 254. To supporting Xian Island, the Guan family was the strongest existence that ruled the entire island. Although Baihua Fairy had been expelled from supporting Xian Island, she was still Guan Dinghai's daughter. Regarding this, the decision-makers of supporting Xian Island couldn't help but consider it carefully. But now that the so-called heroes killed more than 30 tribulation-passing stage elders of supporting Xian Island, it created a lot of pressure for Feng Xiangtian and the others who wanted to side with Guan Dinghai's daughter. After all, there were voices from other factions in supporting Xian Island, and they had to give an explanation to the disciples of supporting Xian Island. This was why supporting Xian Island had to keep the news under wraps even after more than 30 people were killed. It was hard to make a decision without a thorough investigation. Guan Dinghai said that if this matter was related to his daughter, he would personally deal with her. But as someone who was raised by the Guan family, he had to consider the Guan family's interests. Otherwise, why would they help you? Now that Yu Qianqiu said that Baihua Fairy didn't know anything, it immediately attracted Quan Deming's attention. He believed that as long as Baihua Fairy wasn't related to this matter, the sect master and the others would be able to do whatever they wanted. Chiao Wuyuan was concerned about this issue because he was thinking from the perspective of the 10,000 demons. If this matter really had nothing to do with Baihua Fairy, and it was all planned by the Yen father and son, then the 10,000 demons would be at a disadvantage. Who didn't know that Baihua Palace was able to stand tall in the cultivation world without falling because of the secret attention of the number 1 sect of the righteous and demon path? Now that Baihua Palace was secretly planning to control the entire cultivation world of the Hua Xia Empire, this was a matter that caused public anger. Everyone was waiting to see how to deal with it. Think about it, Baihua Fairy who was supported by supporting Xian Island didn't know anything, but Yen Bugue who was supported by the 10,000 demons was secretly causing trouble. Who wouldn't suspect that the 10,000 demons were behind this? Even he himself was a bit suspicious. Actually, the internal situation of the 10,000 demons was similar to that of supporting Xian Island. It was also a situation where Yen family's influence was the strongest. Even the decision-makers couldn't do anything. But if Baihua Fairy was also involved, it would be much easier. They were both the number 1 sects of the righteous and demon path. For the benefit of both sects, what couldn't be discussed? Was there anything in the cultivation world that couldn't be solved by 2 families? That's why Chiao Wuyuan is hoping that Baihua Fairy is also one of the masterminds behind this. With regards to this, Yu Qianqiu had already thought of it. He absolutely could not allow supporting Immortal Island and 10,000 demons to find common interests. These 2 sects were the mainstays of both the righteous and demonic sections. If they did not fall into chaos, the cultivation world would not fall into chaos. It would be difficult for the heroes that he led to stand out. That's why Baihua Fairy can't get involved in this. Even if it's related to her, she has to be cleared of any involvement. Yu Qianqiu pondered for a moment and said, "When I was hiding in the valley, I overheard the conversation between Yan Juexing and his men." The surrounding people frowned. Although they didn't say anything, many people rolled their eyes. They didn't say anything in front of the other party. Now that the other party had left, they directly reported the other party's name without a reminder. What was this? How could they know that Yu Qianqiu wanted to let them go? What did they talk about? Quan Deming hurriedly asked. He was hoping that Yu Qianqiu would expose Bai Hua Fairy in front of everyone, nothing else was important. They were talking about spirit stones. Yan Juexing's men asked him why they couldn't get more from Bai Hua Palace if they didn't have enough spirit stones. Yan Juexing was very unhappy at the time, so he warned them to hide well in the valley and not let anyone from Bai Hua Palace know of their existence. Because Bai Hua Palace's master doesn't know about the father and son duo, they couldn't get more spirit stones from Bai Hua Palace. Using a large amount of spirit stones would cause Bai Hua Palace's master to be suspicious, and might even be discovered by supporting Immortal Island. Because of this, he auctioned off the 5 divine craftsmen's treasures and arranged for people to rob on Kwangsung and the Luo sect spirit stone mines. At this point, Yu Qianqiu looked around at everyone. From their conversation, we can tell that they're in dire need of spirit stones, but Bai Hua Palace's master doesn't know about them either. Quan Deming sighed in relief. Looking at everyone's expression, Chiu Weiyuan scowled, so the 5 divine craftsmen's treasures that were auctioned off came from Bai Hua Palace. They didn't come from Bai Hua Palace, they came from the Yan father and son duo, Quan Deming immediately corrected him. Chiu Weiyuan glanced at him and didn't say anything else. This matter is related to everyone's benefits, explaining it would only cause misunderstandings, so now isn't the time to argue. Everyone, I'll be leaving first. Yu Qianqiu clasped his fist at everyone, then gestured for Dong Guosu and his wife to bring Hong Qi back first. After such a thing happened, no one asked him to stay for a drink anymore. At the entrance of Hundred Flowers Valley, Yu Qianqiu noticed that the shopkeepers of the 4 major clans had followed him. Seeing that there was no one around, he immediately waved at the 4 of them, and they quickly came over to greet him. Yu Qianqiu said to Wu Clan's shopkeeper, "Help me send a message to your clan master, ask him to wait for me at Wu Clan, I'll go look for him in a few days and fulfill my promise to him." The 4 of them looked at each other and didn't understand what was going on. Wu Clan's shopkeeper clasped his fist with a little doubt and said, "Mr. Yu." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and interrupted, "You don't have to ask too much, just tell your clan master my words, he will naturally know what I mean." Finishing his words, he glanced at the returning sects and flashed into Hundred Flowers Valley. In Dong Guosu's courtyard, a family of 3 was waiting for him. After Yu Qianqiu came in, he looked around for a while and said, "Mr. Donghua, it's not safe for you to stay here anymore, it's better for you to leave with me." The couple looked at each other, then Dong Guosu clasped his fist and said, "We appreciate Mr.'s good intentions, but if we follow Mr., we might be a burden to Mr. Mr., it's better for you to leave with Hong Qi first. The world is so big, we can just find a place to hide, and it won't be easy for others to find us. Don't think too much. It's not what you think. We're not going to escape." Yu Qianqiu glanced at little Hong Qi, who was looking at his grandparents reluctantly. He immediately raised his hand and pointed at the house, saying in an unquestionable tone, "Now, pack up everything that you can take with you. I'll send you to a safe place." After saying that, he saw that the couple was still a little conflicted, so he shouted in a stern tone, "Don't hesitate anymore. Pack up immediately." Regardless of whether they were willing or not, seeing that Yu Qianqiu was a little angry, the couple immediately followed his instructions for the sake of their grandson. After the couple was ready, Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and sent the family of 3 into Utopia. Then, he walked through all the rooms inside and out. He took away all the tables, chairs, paintings, tea sets, pots and pans, and even the bedding and quilts. When he returned to Utopia, Dong Guisu and his family were dumbfounded as they looked at the pile of things on the ground. Guan Yu, who had received the summons, quickly brought a few people over. Yu Qianqiu pointed at Hong Qi and said, "His name is Hong Qi, and he's my disciple. Bring him to the military camp. Put in some effort and strictly supervise his cultivation. Don't show any mercy. After his cultivation breaks through to the foundation establishment stage, I'll bring him to Ethereal Palace to personally teach him." After saying that, he pointed at Donghua and his wife and said, "These are Hong Qi's maternal grandparents. Help them move the things on the ground away and build a house for them in the south that's about to be reclaimed. In the future, Utopia's self-sufficient farming will be handed over to Mr. Donghua." "Got it." Guan Yu sized up the three of them and immediately ordered his subordinates to carry out the orders. Dong Guisu and his wife looked around and felt like they were in a dream. They were so shocked that they couldn't say a word. However, Yu Qianqiu disappeared from where he was. Chapter 255. Inside Baihua Palace's main hall, there was no one on the left or right, only a dignified and beautiful woman was sitting in the middle. There was a row of empty chairs beside her. If Yu Qianqiu knew that this beautiful woman was that old man Yan Dugui's wife, he wouldn't be surprised. The cultivation world was the same as the mortal world. All women cherished their looks, and in the cultivation world, only women would be willing to spend so much of their cultivation to slow down the aging of their looks. What men care about is strength. Their logic is that as long as they are stronger than others, what's there to be afraid of not having a woman? That's why it's common for Dao companions to be old men with young wives. After Baihua Fairy received her subordinate's report, she dismissed her subordinates and sat alone on her throne, recalling everything that happened in the past. For that man, she didn't hesitate to fall out with her father, was expelled from the sect, worked hard to get to where she is today, and even gave birth to a son and a daughter for him. She thought it was worth it, but that man actually hid it from her for over 100 years. No one could understand the sorrow she was feeling right now. Yan Zixia slowly walked into the main hall. Her gaze fell on her mother's hands that were tightly gripping the chair. She called out, "Mother." Baihua Fairy looked up, squeezing out a loving smile. It's good that she has a daughter to accompany her. Her mouth opened and closed a few times before she spoke, trying to be as calm as possible. "Did your father and brother both leave?" Yan Zixia bit her lips and nodded dejectedly. Then she heard her mother let out a long sigh. At this time, Yan Bugue and Yan Zixia were leading a group of people on their flying tools, quickly heading east. Their destination was naturally the island where they were hiding their strength. For them, that was the safest place. Yan Zixia's expression was twisted as she gritted her teeth. Yu Qianqiu, I won't forgive you." Yan Bugue looked at his son with a serious expression, not sure if the force he worked so hard to build up could withstand the storm that's about to come. He sighed, "Exposed too early, all my efforts wasted, ha. Your mother must hate me to death right now." In Fuxian Island, Feng Xiangtian was worried about the death of more than 30 elders. The elders from the other factions were already pressuring him. The pressure was huge. When he received Quan Deming's report, he was stunned. Yu Qianqiu had actually created another fire spell. With his core formation stage cultivation, he killed 7 Daluo sect's nascent soul stage disciples in a row in the 100 Flowers Valley and challenged the Daluo sect's tribulation stage elder. The elder fled in fear. Yu Qianqiu's name shook the cultivation world with a single battle. Feng Xiangtian stood there expressionlessly for a long time, and he sighed in his heart. Looks like I didn't make a mistake back then, what a pity. It was useless to lament the loss of such a talent. After all, he was the one who had personally expelled him from the sect. After a moment of silence, his spirits rose. It was good that this matter had nothing to do with senior sister. Feng Xiangjian looked at the injured Dongfang Chang Ao and waved to the people in front of him, "Follow me to Heaven Heart Pavilion." He immediately threw the matter of Yu Qianqiu to the back of his mind. To him and Fuxian Island, there were more important things to do. Without the intervention of Yan clan, Hundred Flowers Palace was Fuxian Island's Hundred Flowers Palace. There was also the hero who dared to attack Fuxian Island. A series of matters needed to be handled quickly. In Wu Clan's ancestral hall, after receiving the news from the shop in the Hundred Flowers Valley, Wu Sihai laughed and said to the 3 clan masters, "This kid finally appeared. We don't have to look around anymore." Sigh. I really don't know what to say about this kid. It seems like wherever he goes, he will create earth-shattering incidents. I've never seen him in peace. Is he talking about fulfilling his promise about going to Demon Domain? Bai Clan's clan master, Bai Shouji, asked. That's right. Wu Sihai nodded with a smile. This is what he promised. Since he is coming, we don't have to rush to the Hundred Flowers Valley. Tan Clan's clan master, Tan Ruchang, said. The leader of the Jing clan, Jing Feihong, nodded and said, he said he'll be here in a few days. We shouldn't have to wait too long. Let's get ready here and wait for him. The 4 of them nodded. After Yu Qianqiu arrived at the State Pillar General's residence, he asked Shi Xiaotian about the recent situation. He learned that Fuxian Island sent another nascent soul state preceptor to protect the emperor, and the emperor didn't do anything to the general's residence. It was obvious that the development of the situation wasn't deviating from his original guess. Just think about it, Fuxian Island was already busy with their own matters. How could they have the time to care about the secular world, at least in the near future? It seemed like his operation in the cultivation world had many effects. First, not only did he divert Fuxian Island's attention from the secular world, but he also ensured that his plan in the secular world was carried out. Second, he diverted the cultivation world's attention from him. Now, everyone's attention was probably on the father and son from Yan clan and the forces behind them. The matter of wanting to kill him had stopped. Third, he suppressed and attacked the fake heroes. Fourth, his plan to disrupt the cultivation world and exhaust the strength of the cultivation world could be carried out steadily. This would reduce the pressure on the rise of his heroes to the minimum. Fifth, after the battle in the Hundred Flowers Valley, he made the Starflame fire technique famous. Ordinary sects probably wouldn't dare to provoke him. Even if there was, it would be the Daluo sect. However, even if they didn't come looking for him, he would still go looking for them. After understanding the general situation, Yu Qianqiu carefully checked the defense of the general's residence. Although he felt that no one would come looking for trouble, since Shi Wenguang had entrusted his family to him, he had to be careful. If there was an accident, it would disappoint Shi Wenguang. On the way, he met Bao Wanshi and Situ Hui. The 2 women were now very respectful to him. The incident that night had completely shocked them. This Mr. Yu was not an ordinary person. After finding the heroes, who were secretly guarding the general's residence, Yu Qianqiu greatly encouraged the 10 of them. He asked them to continue to work hard and stick to their posts. He also gave them abnormally generous rewards. After that, he still dressed up as a servant and leisurely went to Wanhualu. Once he arrived at the courtyard of Wanhualu, he walked around the lush greenery and saw the Enchantress of 100 Charms leaning against the window of the attic and looking at him with a smile. Yu Qianqiu suddenly felt a headache. After he went up to the attic, he still bowed respectfully and said, "Master's wife." The Enchantress of 100 Charms' waist that was as soft as a water snake came close to him, forcing him to take a few steps back. Then, she laid her soft arms on his shoulder and breathed into his ear. She smiled charmingly and said, "Yu Qianqiu, you're really good at scheming. Tell me honestly, how many secrets do you have that you haven't told your master's wife?" Yu Qianqiu coughed a few times and took the opportunity to turn to the opposite side of the table. After the two of them were separated by the table, he stopped coughing and said with a bitter smile, "Master's wife, you're too serious. I do have a few secrets, but not as many as you think." Although he believed in the Enchantress of 100 Charms' feelings for House Sancy and that she did not have any evil intentions towards him, he would not go so far as to reveal all of his secrets to her. The saying that the human heart was unpredictable was the truth. There were also different levels of people he believed in. At least in his heart, the Enchantress of 100 Charms was far from the level of Bai Sujan. There were very few women that a man could entrust everything to. Hearing this, the Enchantress of 100 Charms' eyes seemed to be free of charge as she threw them over one after another. Wrapped in red muslin, her plump buttocks were sitting on the table. A fair and slender thigh slid out of the muslin and was lifted up to place on the table. It was very dazzling, especially the scenery under her skirt, which was faintly discernible. Yu Qianqiu felt that his nose was going to bleed, so he quickly turned his head to the side. The Enchantress of 100 Charms pulled her entire body onto the table and posed seductively. She giggled and said, "Not many secrets. Let's not talk about the hero from before. Now, there's the Starflame fire technique that could actually force Zhu Xianxian, who was in the tribulation stage, to run away. Yu Qianqiu, you really surprise me endlessly." As she said this, she swung out a fair and fleshy leg and pointed at Yu Qianqiu's chest with her vermilion toe. She said, "You dare to say that the new talent assembly that was held by the supporting Immortal Island wasn't disrupted by others because of you? Also, how did the supporting Immortal Island know the location of the valley have nothing to do with you?" Yu Qianqiu coughed a few more times and went around to the other side, avoiding the toe that was pointing at his chest. He forcefully explained, "That was purely an accident. Who are you trying to fool?" The Enchantress of 100 Charms rolled her eyes and placed her hands on the table. She puffed out her plump chest and snorted, "What a good scheme. I originally wanted to see who was the real and fake hero, and who was more powerful. Great, you caused trouble for the supporting Immortal Island and caused them to lose more than 30 tribulation stage elders for nothing. Then, you ran to the 100 Flowers Valley and caused a ruckus. You're pushing the supporting Immortal Island to be the vanguard. Fortunately, I knew some things beforehand. Otherwise, how would I know that a little fellow like you actually had so many crooked thoughts? Sigh. I'm depressed. How Wu Wei is such an honest person. How did he teach a little fox like you?" Yu Qianqiu chuckled at the side. He didn't bother to explain and tacitly agreed to it. He thought to himself, how can it be so simple? I'm aiming for the whole cultivation world. Master's wife, you can slowly experience it. Little fox, you're feeling guilty, right? The Enchantress of 100 Charms raised her hand and swiped her finger across her red lips. She asked lazily, "You don't come to me for no reason. Little fox, tell me the truth. What did you come to me for?" Chapter 256. Mistress, look at what you're saying. I'm here to see you. Yu Qianqiu said with a silly smile. Who are you trying to fool? I think you can't wait to avoid me, yet you're here to see me. You're not telling the truth, are you? The temptress was too lazy to say anything more. She pulled the red muslin off her legs, revealing her white, fleshy thighs. Since you're so filial, I can't refuse you. Come, don't go anywhere today. Massage my legs. Ah. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. His expression suddenly became serious. Now that you've reminded me, I really do have something I need your help with. Too late. The temptress raised her hand and pointed at her thighs lazily. Massage my legs first, then we'll talk about other things. Yu Qianqiu immediately chuckled. Mistress, I'm clumsy and uncomfortable. Next time. Next time, I'll find you a skilled master to serve you. Cut the crap. If I don't massage today, don't come looking for me next time. The temptress snorted. Damn it. You're trying to take advantage of me. Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched. After hesitating for a while, he gritted his teeth and slowly moved closer. He opened his claws and touched the temptress's smooth and elastic thighs. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Yu Qianqiu muttered in his heart. He looked straight ahead, and his fingers, which were as hard as chicken claws, began to pinch her white and tender thighs. It was torture. As soon as he started, the temptress's body trembled. How was this a massage? It was more like tickling. She quickly covered her mouth with her hands, but she couldn't hold back her laughter. In the end, she couldn't stand the tickling anymore. She pulled her legs back and said weakly, "Forget it, I don't want you to massage anymore. If you continue to pinch me, Shenyang's life will definitely end up in your hands. Say it. Find me if you need anything." Yu Qianqiu didn't dare to cause any more trouble. This mistress was a seductress among women. She was extremely seductive and seductive. If he continued to cause trouble, he would definitely lose control. He knew his character very well. Calming himself down, he warmed up his stiff hands and said straightforwardly, "Masteress, please help me collect the news of the world of cultivators and the movements of various sections." The 100 Charm Demon Ji said with a charming smile, "What do you want to do? Could it be that you want to attack another sect?" Yes. From now on, he had to keep an eye on the movements of the cultivation world. The matter of the Daluo sect had to be resolved sooner or later, and the revenge of his master could not be delayed indefinitely. I need to find an opportunity. After all, the Daluo sect's strength is extraordinary, so I can't act rashly. But if I do, I'll wipe out the exalted sect completely. That's what I swore in front of my master's grave, Yu Qianqiu said solemnly. He wasn't lying, but he had an even more important goal. He needed to borrow the Allure Beauty's information network to keep an eye on the situation of the cultivation world. With the strength of the Yen father and son, he couldn't let others exterminate them too easily, but he also couldn't let others stop. He had to know his limits and act according to the situation at the crucial moment. He had to see when he needed to intervene. In short, he wanted the cultivation world to keep fighting until he could expose his strength. The Allure Beauty was startled. She pulled up the red veil to cover the split of her legs and retracted the seductive look on her face. She nodded and said, "That's not a problem. You can come to me at any time to get the latest news. Then I'll leave it to you, Masteress. I still have some matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first." Yu Qianqiu bowed and wanted to leave. He really didn't dare to stay any longer. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself and do something shameful. Wait. The Allure Beauty stopped him. She frowned and said, "You said your master's grave just now. Can you tell me where he is buried?" Yu Qianqiu paused for a moment. He shook his head and said to her apologetically, "Masteress, that place involves some people who don't want to show their faces. It's not convenient for me to tell you right now. But I can promise you that after my master's death is avenged, I'll personally bring you there." "I understand." A trace of disappointment flashed across the Allure Beauty's face. Yu Qianqiu turned around and quickly left. The Allure Beauty moved her body down from the table. Her eyes inadvertently glanced at the finger marks on her thigh. Thinking about the situation just now, a rare flush appeared on her face. Her breathing quickened. She looked out of the window and muttered, "When love is a thing of the past." At the western border, there were many military camps. Because the flames of war at the border had been extinguished, it became lively again. There were many large and small markets around the border. Various countries began to trade with each other. The civilians and merchants who wandered here finally enjoyed the value of peace. Enchanting was dressed in a military uniform. He led a group of people to the market to buy things that would be used for construction. The Pillar of State General ordered the construction of barracks to replace the flexible tents from before. It seemed that he intended to stay here for a long time. Enchanting was followed by 2 soldiers who had not spoken a word since the beginning. These 2 soldiers were none other than the 10 members of the underworld that Enchanting had sent to protect the Pillar of the State General. Wingguang was worried about his son's safety. Thus, he sent 2 people to follow him. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the market. A servant dressed in black clothes and a black hat blocked the path of Enchanting and the others. A group of soldiers wanted to chase him away, but they were blocked by Enchanting. Who else could this servant be other than Enchanting? Enchanting looked at the 2 people beside him. Both of them were calm. It was obvious that they already knew that Enchanting was coming. He quickly walked over and was about to greet him when he saw Enchanting bowing first. "Second young master, Madam has asked me to deliver a letter to master." Enchanting was taken aback. He immediately understood that Enchanting did not want to attract attention. He smiled and said, "Come, follow me to see master." Under the watchful eyes of the surrounding merchants, Enchanting followed Enchanting towards the barracks. Passing through the gate guarded by the soldiers, they entered the barracks. Enchanting got rid of his servants and looked around. Suddenly, he saw a crowd moving in the direction of the training ground. He could not help but ask, "Enchanting, what's going on over there?" Enchanting looked over inside. "Yesterday, a general named Zhang Ping violated the rules of the army. He led his men to pillage the state of Wei and almost caused a war between the 2 countries. He then looked at the blazing sun in the sky and sighed, 'For the sake of military discipline, the general who violated the rules will be executed at noon.' He was a talented general. What a pity. Oh. Hearing his regretful tone, Enchanting asked as they walked, "Who is this Zhang Ping? Why does young general think so highly of him?" Enchanting walked beside him and said in a heavy voice, "Zhang Ping is a local. When he was young, his house was plundered by the Wei army. He was the only one who did not die but was on the verge of death. When my father was passing by with his army, he saved him and has been by his side ever since. He started fighting with the army at the age of 14 and has been through more than 10 years. In every battle, he was the vanguard of his men and was wounded countless times. It is a miracle that he is still alive today. Perhaps it is because of his tragic childhood, Zhang Ping has become a bloodthirsty and ruthless person. His men have never taken any captives in battle and have killed them all. My father did not have the heart to do so, but this is a matter of great importance. Now that the borders cannot be in chaos, my father can only use him as a warning to the others and to uphold military discipline." Enchanting stopped walking. He was just asking casually and could not be bothered to care about a dead man. He did not expect to hear such a formidable person. His interest was piqued and he waved his hand. "Let's go, I want to see what this fierce general looks like." Chapter 257. Enchanting was taken aback, but he quickly led the way. When they arrived at the edge of the training ground, the surrounding soldiers quickly made way for them when they saw the young general. Enchanting silently stood beside Enchanting and looked at the simple wooden platform. It would have been fine if he didn't look, but once he did, he immediately gasped in shock. A bare-chested man was tied up with his hands behind his back, and an executioner was standing beside him, ready to execute him. The man was tall and muscular, and even though he was tied up, one could still feel the murderous aura emanating from his body. His eyes were filled with killing intent, and it was obvious that he was someone who had been through a lot of killing. What shocked Yu Qianqiu was not these, but the fact that this man's upper body was bare. Apart from his face, there was not a single patch of unscathed skin on his upper body. There were all kinds of mottled scars of various shapes and sizes, obviously left behind by the baptism of various weapons. On his chest and arms, there were also a few fresh wounds that had yet to dry. Damn it! This guy really crawled out from a pile of corpses. He probably used his scars as tattoos. Yu Qianqiu shook his head slightly. It was a pity that such a good general was killed just like that, but this was not his business. His gaze swept across Zhang Peng's body a few times, and just as he was about to leave. Suddenly, someone behind him said softly, "Leader, this man has innate spiritual roots." Innate spiritual roots. Yu Qianqiu was startled. He didn't need to turn around to know that it was his subordinate who was talking to him. Others wouldn't call him leader. Yu Qianqiu immediately focused his gaze on the man, and after a closer look, he was shocked once again. It really was innate spiritual roots. Anyone who entered the cultivation world must have spiritual roots, and people like Yu Qianqiu were only exceptions. Spiritual roots were also divided into different grades, and the so-called innate spiritual roots were the ones with the highest aptitude for cultivation. It was rumored that one could achieve twice the results with half the effort. It seemed that there hadn't been such a person in the cultivation world for a long time, and he didn't expect to meet one. Yu Qianqiu immediately turned his head and whispered into Shi Yintian's ear, "Spare him, I have great use for him." Shi Yintian actually heard the words of the person behind him, and although he didn't understand what it meant, since Yu Qianqiu had spoken, his father would definitely give him face, so there was hope for Zhang Peng to live. Thus, he said in a low voice, "This order can only be revoked with my father's order. There is still some time before noon. Why don't Mr. inform my father? Let's go." Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything else. Shi Yintian quickly led him towards the main tent. When they arrived at the main tent, the other soldiers stayed outside. After the two of them entered, Yu Qianqiu smiled at the figure in the middle who was holding a map and said, "General, how have you been?" Shi Wenguang turned around, and his face lit up. He took a few steps forward and bowed. "Mister, you're here." Yu Qianqiu smiled and nodded. His main purpose of coming here was to inform Shi Wenguang of the news from the capital, and to let Shi Wenguang know that his family was safe, so that he could focus on his rebellion. The two sat down, and after explaining the situation in the capital, Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "Great General, I have a request." Shi Wenguang waved his hand and smiled, "Mister, please don't joke around. With Mister's ability, what request do you have for me? I should be the one asking for a favor." Yu Qianqiu didn't speak any more nonsense. If he continued, the innate spiritual roots outside would be beheaded. He immediately said with a solemn expression, "I'm not joking. Just now, I saw a person who will be executed at noon. I hope that General can be merciful and give this person to me. I have great use for him." Shi Wenguang looked at his son suspiciously. He suspected that his son was the one who begged Yu Qianqiu to save Zhang Peng. Shi Yintian smiled bitterly and waved his hand, "Father, please don't doubt me. It really has nothing to do with me. General, please don't think too much." Yu Qianqiu paused and said, "Let me explain it to you this way. When I passed by the execution ground, I discovered that Zhang Peng is not an ordinary person. He has excellent spiritual roots, and I wish to take him as my disciple. I hope that General can give me this face. So that's how it is. I will naturally give Mr. Face." Shi Wenguang stood up and took out a token from the bottle on the table. He handed it to Shi Yintian and said, "Pass down my order. Zhang Peng's execution is to be postponed and brought to my tent." Shi Yintian's face lit up with joy. He received the token and respectfully said, "This general will obey." Yu Qianqiu laughed and continued to converse with Shi Wenguang. Not long after, the tied-up Zhang Peng was brought in by Shirin Tian. Shi Wingguang sat behind the table and stared at the newcomer with a gloomy expression. Criminal General Zhang Peng greets General. Zhang Peng's voice was loud and clear as he knelt down. Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting not far from him, could feel the valiant aura coming from his body. Shi Wingguang shouted in a deep voice, "Zhang Peng, you have violated the military rules and should be beheaded. However, there is an expert who begged this general to accept you as his disciple. If you agree to be his disciple, this general can consider sparing your life." Yu Qianqiu smiled as he stared at Zhang Peng, thinking that he would definitely accept this person as his disciple. Who wouldn't want to live? Who would have thought that Zhang Peng would look around, and after his gaze paused on Shi Wingguang, he replied, "I wonder which expert wishes to accept me as his disciple, please enlighten me." Shi Wingguang raised his finger and pointed. Yu Qianqiu stood up and smiled, "It's me. Criminal General would rather accept death." Zhang Peng glanced at him and said nothing else. Everyone in the tent was stunned. Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously, "What's wrong with being my disciple? You would rather die than submit." Zhang Peng knelt down and sized him up, then snorted coldly, "Judging from your age, you're not even as old as I am, how can you be my master? If I submit, wouldn't it be a great humiliation to me? How would I dare to submit? Impudent!" Shi Wingguang immediately shouted, "Mr. Accepting you as his disciple is your fortune, you really don't know what's good for you. Men, drag him away and behead him." "Wait!" Yu Qianqiu smiled and waved his hand, stopping the general from showing off his military might. He circled around Zhang Peng twice and said, "How can I be your master? I have the strength to lift 1,000 caddies, and the courage to conquer the 3 armies. If you can defeat me, I will take you as my master." Zhang Peng proudly declared. "Damn it! If it weren't for your innate spiritual root, I wouldn't care if you were dead or alive. You're just a commoner, and you want to fight me." Yu Qianqiu sneered, "Your strength is like an ant in my eyes. Your bravery is nothing in my eyes. You think too highly of yourself. If I want to defeat you, it'll be as easy as lifting a finger." Then, a bewitching red light flashed on the tip of his finger, and in the blink of an eye, the ropes that Zhang Peng had tied him up broke. Yu Qianqiu shouted, "Get up, show me what you've got. I want to see what you're capable of." Zhang Peng looked at the neatly broken ropes on his chest and was stunned for a moment. He then shook off the ropes, stood up, and stretched his body. His bones cracked, and he cupped his fists and shouted, "Excuse me, watch my fist. Damn it! He's really not holding back." Yu Qianqiu circulated his true yuan and pointed a finger at Zhang Peng's fist. The fist and finger collided in the air. Yu Qianqiu sneered, while Zhang Peng's face twitched. He felt that the half of his body that had punched out had gone numb, and he couldn't move at all. The winner was decided, and the Shi father and son looked at each other in dismay. So powerful! Yu Qianqiu retracted his finger and said with an expressionless face, "If you're not convinced, you can try again." Zhang Peng's body took a long time to recover. He stretched his body, but didn't say a word. He walked to the weapons rack at the side of the tent, and took out a long steel spear that was as thick as a baby's arm. He shouted, "Again!" His strong body pounced at Yu Qianqiu, and like a bolt of lightning, the spear went straight for Yu Qianqiu's chest. Yu Qianqiu laughed coldly, and his index finger glowed with a demonic red light again, and he pointed it at the spear's head. With a sizzling sound, the spear began to melt from the spearhead all the way to the end of Zhang Peng's hand. The spear fell to the ground like molten iron. Zhang Peng only felt his hand burning, and he hurriedly threw the spear away. However, he didn't give up, and threw another punch at his opponent's face. "Humph!" Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly, intending to teach him a lesson. He retracted the red light on his finger, and flicked away Zhang Peng's heavy fist. Then, he quickly pointed at Zhang Peng's chest. Zhang Peng immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, and his whole body was sent flying by the finger. He flipped a few times in the air, and fell to the ground. He looked like he was on the verge of death. The Shi father and son were shocked once again, and they looked at each other speechlessly. Yu Qianqiu expressionlessly stared at the person moaning on the ground. He said coldly, "What strength pulling 1,000 caddies? What bravery! You can't even compare to one of my fingers. How can you say that? Is this all you have? You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. If you're not convinced, and you still have the strength, you can try again." Zhang Peng clutched his chest, and his whole body seemed to collapse. His face was pale, and he staggered to his feet. He staggered to the front of Yu Qianqiu, and knelt down. He kowtowed, and said, "Zhang Peng is convinced, and pays his respects to master." Chapter 258. Yu Qianqiu glanced at him in surprise. He had thought that with his wild and untamed character, he wouldn't give in so easily. He was prepared to torture him again and completely tame him. He didn't expect him to be someone who knew how to adapt to circumstances. He was a promising talent. He allowed him to kneel on the ground and ignored him. Yu Qianqiu summoned 10 hero members and rewarded them generously, encouraging them to continue to work hard and protect Shi Wenguang's safety. Of course, the material rewards were quite generous too. After getting the 10 people to return to their positions, Yu Qianqiu smiled at Shi Wenguang and said, "There's still a long way to go in the future. General, please take care of yourself. I, Yu Qianqiu, will bid farewell here." "Farewell, mister." The father and son couldn't get him to stay, so they could only cup their hands and send him off. When he raised his head again, Yu Qianqiu was already gone. The tower-like man on the ground had also disappeared. Shi Wenguang stopped and sighed. It's a pity that little Tian isn't as good as him. In Utopia, Zhang Peng looked around and was a little confused. Yu Qianqiu said coldly, "You might be considered a fierce general in the mortal world, but here, anyone is stronger than you. I'll give you a chance to break away from the conflicts of mortals. Grasp it well. When the time comes, you'll know how insignificant you are." Guan Yu rode his horse over, and Yu Qianqiu felt a headache when he saw the broken horse. He said calmly, "This is my second disciple. Bring him to train with Hong Qi. You must supervise him strictly." Guan Yu frowned. He didn't understand why Yu Qianqiu would take in disciples one after another. He nodded and shouted to Zhang Peng, "Follow me." "Good horse." Zhang Peng stared at Red Rabbit and couldn't help but exclaim. He was a soldier who had galloped on the battlefield, so he was naturally fond of good horses. When he turned back, Yu Qianqiu had already disappeared. He immediately ran after the horse. Inside Hibiscus's room in Wanfen Garden, a man and a woman were locked in the room. Just as they were about to lose control of themselves, a loud moan suddenly rang out. Yu Qianqiu was startled. He quickly covered her mouth and said guiltily, "Grandaunt, lower your voice." Hibiscus's amorous feelings were boundless. She shyly said, "I couldn't help it." Just as he finished speaking, he heard the door open with a bang. Ferdinand shouted, "How dare you!" His voice stopped abruptly. What entered his eyes was a naked man and woman flashing into the quilt. Yu Qianqiu poked his head out and smiled shyly, "Elder. Elder Fei, long time no see." After seeing it clearly, Ferdinand's body swayed and he almost couldn't stand still. His expression was twitching non-stop. Needless to say, the other person was definitely his daughter. There were hurried footsteps coming from outside the courtyard. Ferdinand took a breath and walked out of the door. With his back facing the room, he shouted, "It's okay. Go back." There was a rustling sound of clothes being put on. After a while, Yu Qianqiu, who was hiding behind Hibiscus, walked to the door. Both of their expressions were quite interesting. The former smiled awkwardly, "Elder Fei. Hee hee." Ferdinand resisted the urge to kill this kid and said in a low voice, "Hibiscus stays. You come with me." Damn it. I'm so embarrassed. I'm actually caught in bed. Why does this old guy walk without making a sound? I didn't even have time to run away. At this time, Yu Qianqiu's expression was very depressed. He squeezed out a smile to bid farewell to the extremely shy Hibiscus and followed his future father-in-law. Passing through the courtyard corridor, they turned into a dark room. Ferdinand faced a wall and didn't say anything for a long time. Yu Qianqiu stood behind and wanted to say something but didn't dare to say anything. So, the two of them were wasting time there. "How did you come?" Ferdinand, who had been silent for a long time, finally spoke. His attitude was not bad. Yu Qianqiu breathed a sigh of relief and said bluntly, "I stole it." The former did not continue to linger on this topic. He sighed and said, "Do you come often?" "Not often. I come every few days," Yu Qianqiu answered very honestly. Ferdinand, who had his back to him, twitched his face again. Anyone who saw his daughter lying on the same bed with another man in an improper manner would not feel comfortable, especially the kind of man who visited frequently. "I want you to promise me one thing." Ferdinand resisted the urge and turned around to stare at him. As for the previous form of questioning, he would not say it even if he was beaten to death. Otherwise, he would really be angered to death. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, Tell me. As long as I can do it, I will promise you. I want you to promise me that no matter what happens, you can't let Furong suffer any grievances in this life. Otherwise, I will never let you go." Ferdinand stared at him and added fiercely, "I will not let you go even if I die. Don't worry about this." Yu Qianqiu grinned and said. Obviously, the other party did not object to him sleeping with his daughter. He immediately patted his chest and promised, "Even if you don't say it, I will not let Furong suffer any grievances. At least I can swear to God that I, Yu Qianqiu, will let Furong live a carefree life. Otherwise, she will never be at peace." Hearing him swear, Ferdinand nodded slightly. His tight face finally relaxed. He pointed to the chair on the side and let him sit down. Then, he sighed and said, "Furong's mother died early. It's all my fault. Otherwise, Furong wouldn't have to suffer so much. I'm sorry for her and her mother." Sigh. "I can see that Furong likes you very much, so I hope you can treat her well. Needless to say. However, you don't have to blame yourself. I believe you must have your difficulties." Yu Qianqiu comforted him hypocritically. He felt refreshed and comfortable now. Speaking of Furong's suffering, he suddenly frowned and said, "Elder Ferdinand, let me ask you something. What happened to Furong's face? It can't be an accident, right?" Hearing that, a trace of bitterness flashed across Ferdinand's face. He shook his head and said, "It's all my fault. It's all my fault." He painfully told the ins and outs of the matter. It turned out that Furong's mother was also a female disciple of Wanfen Garden. Her appearance was incomparable in Wanfen Garden. This could be seen from Furong's appearance. However, when she had sex with Ferdinand, the latter was already Lan Bingshua's husband. To put it bluntly, Furong's birth was the result of Ferdinand's affair with a female disciple of the garden. In the cultivation world, it was normal for a man to have more than one woman. However, Lan Bingxue could not tolerate it, so a tragedy happened. Speaking of Lan Bingxue, there was a secret that outsiders didn't know. Lan Bingxue was not a human, but a monster. She was a jade toad that had cultivated for more than 1,000 years. She was born with an ice spell, and her cultivation had reached the early stage of crossing calamity. She was the pet of Ma Jiogu's father, who was the former sect master of Fuxian Island. At that time, she hadn't transformed into a human yet. After Ma Jiogu's father died, she followed Ma Jiogu. After transforming into a human, she lived in seclusion. Very few people on Fuxian Island knew her identity. They only knew that she served Ma Jiogu all year round. Because of Ma Jiogu's reputation, no one dared to ask about her. At that time, Ferdinand hadn't taken charge of Wanfen Garden yet. He was just one of the outstanding disciples in the garden. Coincidentally, he had the opportunity to visit Lan Bingxue often. The two of them fell in love and became cultivation companions. However, he didn't know that she was a monster at that time, and no one told him. Later, with Lan Bingxue's help, Ma Jiogu passed the position of the principal elder of Wanfen Garden to Ferdinand. On the night when Ferdinand took charge of Wanfen Garden, Lan Bingxue naively thought that her husband would accept the fact that she was a monster after helping him so much. So, she told him about her background and her background. Ferdinand was shocked, but he didn't show it at that time. However, he felt a knot in his heart and gradually had the tendency to alienate her. Then, he met the beautiful Furong's mother. After a long time, something that shouldn't have happened between them. They had been secretly communicating with each other. It was not until Furong was born that this matter was exposed. After knowing this, Lan Bingxue was angry, but she didn't say anything. When Ferdinand left Wanfen Garden, she completely exploded. Not only did she torture Furong's mother, but she also swallowed her mother. She even threw Furong, who was still in swaddling clothes, into a brazier, intending to burn her alive. Fortunately, Ma Jiogu appeared in time and saved Furong. If it were someone else, Lan Bingxue wouldn't have let them go even if they had rushed to the scene. Furong's face, which was saved, was also left with an indelible scar from being burned by the fire. After Ferdinand came back to know this, he wanted to fight with Lan Bingxue. However, Ma Jiogu came to mediate and became the middleman. She made an agreement between the two. Little Furong was then placed in the mulberry garden to grow up. Needless to say, she suffered a lot. Since then, Ferdinand and Lan Bingxue had always been harmonious on the surface but not on the inside. This was the course of the matter. After listening, Yu Qianqiu touched his chin and sneered, "I was wondering why I felt cold when I got close to her. It turns out that she's a jade toad that has been cultivating for 1,000 years. She even practiced some ice spell. In the end, it's all my fault." Ferdinand's face was full of self-blame as he shook his head in pain. "This matter can't be blamed on you. The biggest responsibility still belongs to that toad monster." Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes and said in a deep voice, "It's said that the most vicious thing is a woman's heart. It's indeed true. Hee hee. I don't care what the reason is, and I don't care when it happened. Damn it. You dare to lay your hands on my woman. You have to pay me back with interest." You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.